There we go.
Everybody ready now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call the regular council meeting of August the 10th to order. And first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Staff has pulled item 6.10 and we're adding 6.16. So somebody make that recommendation?
So move. Second.
Second. Oh,
All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried. Next, receipt of committee and commission minutes. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Next, delegation. Hugh Fletcher, owner. That council received the delegation from Hugh Fletcher, owner, regarding the Ilo and King George Hotel. Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Thank you. Carried. We'll wait for them to appear.
Yeah.
Hello, Hugh and
Hi, Leslie.
Jane. Nice to have you here at the council meeting.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yes, and you have a presentation that you would like to make to council?
Shane's the realtor attached to these two buildings, and we've come up with a letter, which I hope you have there. And
Yes.
it really is just outlining the interest that we have in working with whatever the Heritage Registry means to the village of Cumberland. I understand that you're looking at maintaining the heritage of the downtown core, and of course these two properties are pretty iconic for Cumberland, and they've been sitting vacant for too long now. And my particular issue with them is that to try and renovate them with the existing requirements of the town is prohibitive to a certain extent. It could be done, but it's a labor of love rather than a proper money making enterprise. So, and I did okay with Tarbells and Morochis and Scarvadas, and I've moved those properties on to my family, except for Scarvadas, which I sold. And I want to try and do something with the Ilo and the King George this year. So I'm excited to see what the machinations of the Heritage Registry mean to the village, and perhaps we could have some key people or point people that we could work with to see what can be built that is valid there on both these properties. So that was the intent of this presentation, is make council aware that they're sitting there, they've sat there for too long. Something has to be done to them fairly soon. They can't sit vacant for much longer, and I would hate to have to remove them and sell them to somebody who's just going to put up a concrete block. So that was my presentation, and I'm open to any questions if you have any. I know that that's not your usual format, but I'm welcome to ask me anything you like.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Hugh. It's a pleasure to have you here this evening, and we will open it up to questions from members of council. Your request is very detailed, and there's lots of questions that you're answering, and we're not going to answer those questions tonight. Council needs time to look at
Sure.
this further.
Sure.
Okay, so who would like to ask questions? Councillor Brown?
I'm happy to start. Thanks so much, Hugh, for what you've done already for historic buildings in Cumberland. That's great. And yes, you're right. The buildings have sat for too long, and I'm sure it's not a money-making proposition at this point. So my biggest question for you was, what in terms of our HAP process, the heritage alteration process, what are the major barriers for you? Like, is it parking? Is it like which items?
Well, parking I know is like a black hole for, pretty much everybody. And that was the major one for the ILO. Like it was 180 parking spots. And when I first bought the building, there weren't really any fees for parking. And then the Waverley managed to get away with buying some at a discounted rate when they did their renovation. And then the price went up to, I believe it's $3,500 a spot or something now. So that's just a non-starter really. But then, you have to take into account what do you want the building to be. I mean, are theaters still something that we want in a small community? I suspect they probably are if you look at small town economics, probably still a big draw for Cumberland in that respect. But that's the sort of thing I need to discuss with a council as to what they would like to see in that location. And if they do want a theater, then there has to be some discussion about the parking requirements. But putting a public assembly space together, you have to have a fire engineer, a structural engineer, an electrical engineer, a traffic engineer. Just the cost for somebody like myself just become too onerous. I'd love to work in partnership, or even have the village own part of that property, and I know that was discussed in the past, but considered to be too expensive for council to do it at that time. But maybe we could talk about something like that. Just a thought.
Yeah, I love the ILO. I'm attached to both buildings. I think they both have a long history in the village and with completely different uses. But if I had it my way and money weren't an object, the King George would be a boutique hotel and the ILO would be a theater, live and film. But trying to make money off those ventures and trying to have this conversation in a time where we can't even gather is interesting. So those are all, I think we would be open to having a conversation about how to move forward if a proposal came forward. But I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah. Hi, Hugh. Thanks again.
Hi.
Nice to see you. It's been a long time. Just my thanks again for your diligent work in the village and keeping all these buildings going. Just to echo what Councillor Brown said, that I would also be interested in some parking conversations. I mean, I understand how prohibitive the costs are to just about anything to do these days, and especially in this situation. But those two buildings are pretty important to town, so I feel like anything we could really come up with collaboratively or otherwise, that I'd be very supportive of that. And this would be almost the only exception I would find for maybe some parking variances, which I'm not really willing to give up to too many other buildings or projects, but this might be worth something talking about in that regard. But thanks again, and appreciate your patience and all this stuff. And,
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, if it were to remain a theater, which the ILO, which would be my preference, parking, the number of parking spaces would obviously have to be negotiated. I don't know how you could meet that. The King George, I like the idea of the boutique hotel, but again, I feel that the more important of the two is the ILO, and we do have a very strong arts and culture vibe here in Cumberland, and I think that would just enhance it that much more. I think it would be a really good thing, even considering the public assembly challenges we have with COVID. I think that those things will work themselves out in the future, and and we will want this building as a theater then as we do now. But I'm willing to see, the King George maybe not be restored if we're picking between the two. So that's sort of my preference on it.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, I would echo the sentiments of the rest of council. In our minds, I think all of us still hope that a theatre can come into that spot, but of course the parking is an issue. I think, wouldn't it be great if we could have something like the Chemainus Theatre and bus people up, so we wouldn't have the car issue, but that is probably not likely. But the Ilo has already a statement of significance. It's very important to the people of Cumberland. And that's the one, if we can find a way, we'll have to discuss it and come up. Look at all, we haven't really looked at that side of things yet or had a frank discussion on it. But now that we have the opportunity and the focus, because Hugh, thank you, Hugh, coming, you are wanting to have dialogue with council. So that gives us somewhere to start. As far as the King George, I don't know if it's too far gone or not, but if I had to choose between the two, it would be keeping the Ilo. And of course, it would be nice to have a boutique hotel, but really both these ideas seem really remote at the moment, given our situation, although that will change, the COVID thing, over time. But anyway, we'll talk more.
Councillor Brown, you had your hand again?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was in Oregon a few years ago, and there was a very nice example of a small town theater that had live music and live events as well as projected films. And so I will try and figure out what that is and try to pass it along somehow. And maybe they're still operating and maybe they're not. But yeah, I really like that idea and working with the arts and culture community in Cumberland to try and make that work somehow. We have a very skilled new member of the Heritage Committee who has worked in other communities and may be able to help with finding other resources to assist with preserving the heritage of those buildings. I'm not sure if we're being asked to choose. I would not like to choose between the two buildings. I think the King George has an enormous footprint and a long history. And if there was a way to even maintain, even if the building was in a different use, but maintained that same shape and character, it could be put to, a million different uses because of the size of the footprint. It just seems more versatile, whereas the Ilo, you're stuck with that space and trying to make that work. So I'll leave the business case to you and Shane, but yeah, I would love to see both those buildings preserved in some way.
Thank you
And
very much,
Yeah.
members of council. I know we've been talking about a boutique hotel in the Ilo being restored for many, many years. And it's something that we've tried to do in previous discussions, and it just wasn't able. I remember going with different prospective buyers to the Ilo and walking through with them and talking about what their vision was. And there's keen interest out there, and I don't know what has happened to all the people that were interested, but I'm sure we can revive that. The King George Hotel, if you take it back to what it looked like originally, it was a beautiful building. And
yeah,
yes,
Leslie. Yeah, check out Jennifer Barr's book with
Yes.
the old pictures.
Yeah.
yes.
Pretty nice frontage there.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
Mhm.
I know they say you have to have a business case for a boutique hotel, but the need for it in the village is huge. The hotels in Courtenay are making a lot of money off of the biking community because they are going to Courtenay to stay, because they would like those accommodations here. And those are the types of people that would pay good money to stay in a boutique hotel. And it doesn't seem to be going downhill at all in that respect. So I'm glad you're here. and are willing to discuss it with us, and we can work together on this, I am sure, to find a solution that will fit for everybody. Because those two buildings are important to our community, just like the other ones that you restored them to such a caliber that you've raised the bar in a lot of respects for other people that come along. And so that heritage vibe is so important to us as a community. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we look forward, we will get, our decision will be at the next council meeting. I think
Okay.
you were apprised of that.
Yes,
So there will be another discussion then
thank
with
you.
members of council. Okay,
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot, Hugh.
Okay. Next, recommendation that council receive the delegation from Rosalind Ship, Executive Director, and Karen Melnick, Board Member, Cumberland and District Historical Society, regarding renovations and improvement plans at the Cumberland Museum and Archives. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried.
Hello again, everyone. So I thought just before I begin my presentation, I might just say hello and introduce myself, because this is our first time to meet and our first time for me to come to council. So I came on as the executive director to the Cumberland Museum and Archives back in March, when the museum was actually already closed. And since then, I've been working on a number of projects, but my background comes from the Vancouver Heritage Foundation. So your just previous conversation was a great one to listen in on. And as well as the Vancouver Police Museum and the Vancouver Contemporary Art Gallery. So I come from a very strong museum and arts background. So it's just a little bit about myself. And now I'm just going to share my screen with you so that you can see sort of just a presentation and notes to go by while I am talking here. Now, can everyone see the screen okay?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Great. So just to give a little bit of background, I think that in about 2016, Michelle Willard, my predecessor, came together with Anna Rambo and sort of discussed some of the ideas about improving the museum, not just for its building, but also for the organizational capacity. How could the museum improve upon its programming and a number of things that they were doing? A couple of ideas came out of that. There was the idea for an additional floor on top of the existing building. And then there was the idea of the additional building adjacent to the cultural center. So it's sort of on the lawn. I think you heard about that last option last February, if my knowledge is correct. And I think working with the benefactor, Raymond Hyung, we went through a little bit of an analysis and sort of deemed that none of those options were overly appropriate for maybe where the museum was at, where the village was at, and actually for the structural stability of the current museum building, couldn't quite actually handle some of the upgrades that had been discussed after doing a little bit more investigative work. So when I came on, I met with Raymond and a few other people who'd been working on the project. And I sort of decided that we would just, at this point, undertake an internal or interior building upgrade. So what the goals of, or the objectives of that are to improve the physical interior of the building, to enhance the building's environment so that we can increase operational efficiencies and capacities, and then to enrich some of the exhibits and increase access to the museum collection. So I want to just note that this is a little bit of a shift from that original plan that maybe was provided to you in February of last year. There was, with an expanded space, there was a lot more opportunity for expanding programming, but we've now moved into how can we use the space that we currently have and how can we enrich those spaces. So some of the things that the improvements to the building will include is the removal of some hazardous materials. So the building was built in the early 80s, 1981, I believe. So some of the flooring that will be coming up and stuff does contain hazardous materials, so that will be removed. There will be new flooring placed, interior painting, and then the two sort of larger elements will be a new heating and cooling system, and then lighting and electrical upgrades, one to meet code and then to supply the demand for the new HVAC system. For some of the built environment enhancements, this will include a little bit of a rearranging of the layout of the museum as we know it now. One recommendation from Kale Lacasse Construction was the accessibility of our bathroom. We actually see, obviously our bathroom has a high use with our visitors, but also a number of tourists that come in through the community stop in and use our washroom. It's one of the few publicly accessible washrooms in the village. So we really thought that this is a high priority for us to make sure that it is actually accessible to code. We're looking at just rearranging the office space a little bit. And then one of the larger things for myself was taking a look at the community research room, which is used fairly often, and moving it so that it's closer to the archival collection and the rest of the museum's collection, because if we can stimulate people to use not only the community research room, but also the actual archival holdings, I think it'll be of great value to the community in that respect. Another sort of flag that was raised when I came on and did a little bit of an overview study of the facility was the current storage space does not really meet the needs of our collection. And so we will be expanding the artifact storage space. This does mean that we will be losing a small amount of gallery space, exhibition space, but I think it is in the best interest for the care of the collection to move forward with this. So the budget for this is seems a little bit looming first, but it's around $750,000. So obviously the construction is the largest element of that. We are then looking to put about $30,000 into exhibit improvements. That will include the mine, hopefully an area that will talk about forestry and the community forest elements as well. I think is a really important story that's not quite being told at the museum yet. And then we'll have the collection storage improvements, which is about $45,000. And then the operational project costs, which will include the staff time that is required to do this. So that's how we've come up with that figure at the moment. So who's paying for everything is probably a question that's on everyone's mind. So I believe in the last presentation, you may have met Raymond Hyung of the YP Hyung Foundation. So he is looking to backstop the majority of this project. The Cumberland Museum and Archives will be putting in about $45,000 as part of the operational expense. And then the village, I believe it was already approved. That was $41,300 over a period of 5 years. And then we'll also be applying to the Canadian Heritage for their Cultural Spaces Fund. And we're looking at probably gaining about 30% of the budget through then. If that is not successful, that grant application, Raymond is still looking to support the full project. Our timeline for this project is by the end of this week. Actually, we should get our architectural drawings back. Then we would be moving through to the building permit and preparing our collections for moving in September, had a couple of conversations with the administration at the village of a possible use of the cultural center or putting shipping containers behind the museum to house some things. And then in October, we would move the collection and then renovations would begin. There was early discussions on doing for Lacasse to sort of put up physical barriers inside of the museum, and renovation would happen in one area and then we would move things to another area. But museum collections are fragile things, and I actually think it's best to just do our due diligence and actually move the collection outside of that space, so there's not even an opportunity for anything careless to happen. Then we would be looking at 2 to 3 month renovation period. And then we would likely move everything back in and do our exhibition installations and upgrades during that time, and then reopen probably early April is my hope for the museum's 40th anniversary. So yes, open to any questions that anyone might have. And I just, it's easier for me to see you if I stop sharing my screen, if that's okay.
Please do, because I can't see anything of anybody either.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
Hey, thanks very much for that. I know we've all been really curious about what's going on at the museum, and it's nice to meet you. And that's a really exciting presentation. I just want to also say that I think the addition to the community forest and the work that's been done would be a great addition to the museum moving forward. So yeah, that's great. And thanks for your presentation. It's pretty exciting times that it's getting on the go. Thanks.
Councillor Kettler.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to meet you yesterday. I just have some questions about moving the collection and where that might be. So you're using storage containers, so is there a risk for damage just from being in a container that maybe
Damp.
doesn't have moisture control or climate control?
So the storage, like shipping containers, would actually not house the collection. So that would be more of the office supplies or furniture or those types of things. I wouldn't put the collection into a place that didn't have proper conditions. So temperature controls. And so we have looked at renting some storage facilities, but then we're talking with the administration that it would be opportune if the cultural center, since it's closed at the moment, if we would have that space available, we could actually continue to do some collections care work during the renovation, which wouldn't be possible if we were just having to move it to a storage facility. The cost is also substantially different too. There's one storage facility that really looks after art and artifact collections, and it's in Vancouver. It's just in Richmond actually, and so the cost was pretty exorbitant to get everything there and to package it properly for it to move. So sort of being able to move it within essentially the building would be ideal.
Great, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Councillor Sproul.
Yes, Rosalind, it gets me excited to see some solid figures now. We might not get all that money, but the possibility is there. And this little museum has managed to make it through some very difficult times when Cumberland wasn't greatly visited by tourists, but people came to the museum. It was the one thing that constantly drew people here. As far as all the collections, I understand there are so many things that you don't have room to display. Will you be adding more to the collections, or will you be just dealing with what is what we have now and how to store them?
So definitely an area for development for the organization is to put in place a very well-defined and robust collections policy, which does need work. Be very honest about that. It's maybe not up to the museum standards at the moment. You may know that we are looking to hire at the moment, looking for somebody, a curator, who has collections experience. I think that that's a really key importance, and it was a key importance when talking to Canadian Heritage to be able to even access the funds for the cultural spaces. It's a key component for operations of a museum to have somebody in that place. So I think that's one element that we need to work on first. And I think part of an evaluation of the collection needs to include what we have, which I think is they've just done a 2-year database project. So they've actually looked at every physical object in the collection. Not a lot of museums get to undertake that. So that's a pretty exciting project. But in that, we identified holes that could be areas in which we might want to look to the community to say, you know, we don't have a lot of artifacts that depict this particular time in Cumberland. And I think over the coming years, it will definitely be a part of the policy. So there needs to be a proper accession policy and a proper de-accession policy. So, but again, physical space and the type of things that we may be able to take will vary because of our physical space limitations, if that answers your question.
Yes, that's good. I just, while I think of it, some museums have far too much stuff and can't get it all out there. But I know that quite a lot of museums have drawers that you can open where you can't take the stuff out, you know, ways of showing. But I'm racing ahead of us, but I'm pretty excited about the possibilities here. So thank you for the work that you're all doing.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, nice to meet you, Rosalind. Thank you so much and congratulations on your new position. Very happy to hear that a curator is coming on board as well. And also that you've identified those gaps in the collection and are reaching out to community members, because I think there's a lot of untapped artifacts out there, and probably a lot more than you may want, but I'll let you deal with that.
Yeah.
So my question is the same. I was quite looking forward to the expansion of space to make it a more usable building. So can you tell us a little bit more about there's structural issues with the building, or what is preventing that piece of it?
Yeah, so from my understanding, Raymond Young and Kale Lacasse from Lacasse Construction, as well as I believe that some of the village administration, I believe that Rob was involved in some of this as well. They did some looking into the infrastructure of the building. And I guess when it was being constructed in the 80s, there was a cement strike. And so the foundation of the building is actually wood, and it is starting to deteriorate. So I really think what Raymond kind of decided is that building has a lifespan. And, you know, with the possibility of in the long-term future with the village's, you know, 25-year plan, there's maybe opportunity for something else in the future. But at this moment, being the cost without being able to do an addition to the building, so we wouldn't have been able to put another story on top. The current building wouldn't have sustained that. So, and I don't think the addition was accepted overly well last time, is my understanding.
Oh, okay. And there was an expansion that was going to come out the front as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
But that's also not possible.
No, I think that's that we've scaled back, and it will just be looking at the interior of the current building.
Okay. I know the, in normal times, the cultural center is very well used, but I
Mhm.
understand that there are also changes to the use. So are you looking at putting stuff in storage in there, or actually using the physical space? Is there any storage in there?
I think at the moment we were just looking at using the open hall space. I think it would be ideal, and I mean, this is a further conversation to be had with the village administration as well. But if we could have an opportunity to have some sort of public engagement in there, if we had the collection behind one area, and possible so that we could still provide access to maybe a pop-up exhibit or access to the community research room. It would be really great if we can continue some type of public engagement, and a space like the cultural center actually allows us to do that. And it actually allows the team at the museum to continue functioning as a team, working again with the collection and being in location.
Yeah, that's a long time to be closed. Yeah,
Yeah.
to be losing revenue as you're closed as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks so much.
I think it's a wise choice to do that because of the effects of COVID and now the renovation. It is good timing, but you still need to be open and bringing people into the museum. So I commend you for all the work that you're doing and the work of the board. I did attend your AGM and it was well hosted. Thank you very much. Karen, you did a very good job sitting in as chair. And it was really good to hear because you gave an overview of your plans for the future and a bit about what has happened in the past. And it's not easy being a volunteer on a board, I will say. There's always challenges that you do not expect. And so congratulations once again, and we look forward to working with you in the next phase of your development. Thank you. Okay. Rachel's going to take you out. Okay. Next, we have no unfinished business. Next is correspondence. That council received the correspondence from Amanda Howe regarding the need for mental health outreach in the Comox Valley.
Move receipt.
Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. I took this letter and did some research on the ACT program, the Assertive Community Treatment Program that Amanda is speaking about. And it is provided in the areas that she spoke of. And I did talk to the manager of the program in Campbell River. And he is very supportive of it coming to the Comox Valley. In Campbell River, it's a cost of $1 million to bring that forward a year. So it's not a small ask. And under further investigation, I found out that when this program was offered in the Comox Valley, the people that made the decision decided to go another way. They were given two choices. One was the ACT program and the other one was the program that they have now. So they chose the other program. And so I just have one concern, that we don't want to remove the people that are there working now. Maybe there's a way we can work with them, and maybe I'm not sure, but that is a concern I have. I certainly do support that we need additional programming. And I know that Comox did pass it to push it further, and Courtney is dealing with it also. I asked Amanda to send it to Nicole Rempel, the First Nations chief, because they have issues also. So they will be dealing with this letter too. So any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so we do have some services. There's the new primary care outreach team. This was mainly to service people at risk of getting COVID who are homeless, mentally ill, or living with addictions. And to it's an outreach team, and they go out and screen for COVID, deliver urgent primary care, offer addictions medicine consultation, and supports to people. And if people need that number, it's the mental health services unit, and it's 250-331-8642. And I give that out because that's part of what the letter was about. Was Amanda didn't know who to call, or didn't have access to those services. But I also talked to the RCMP, Mike Herbers, and he said they already do have an MOU with Island Health, but it's usually sort of after the fact. So if they pick somebody up who needs mental health services, they have an agreement where they can call a crisis nurse, and they'll come and provide services to that person. But I think where we're trying to go with it possibly is something like they're piloting in the US, and I think in Victoria now it's called the CAHOOTS model. And basically that's where you have the police and the mental health practitioners partner together. So they arrive on scene together and deal with those situations together, as opposed to just having RCMP, or I guess if there's a situational assessment, before the fact, that one or the other could attend depending on what's needed. But I think that's sort of what we're looking for, and maybe not necessarily the ACT model itself. So I think it would be good to look into it further. The other side is that if the other councils are asking for ACT, we don't want to be the ones that are like, no, we don't want it, but because we do want as much help as we can and as much support as we can from upper levels of government. So, if they're saying yes, then we might just want to go with that. But I think we're actually probably, we could refine our ask a lot more than what we're doing now.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I agree that the CAHOOTS model would be ideal here, and that the need, particularly in Cumberland and maybe for the other communities as well, is street level mental health workers who are available when we need them. And so whatever, I'm not attached to whether it's ACT or CAHOOTS or whatever we can get, but I think maybe what we need is to get together with the other communities and Island Health and figure out what the ask is, and go forward from there. Because if they're telling us it's going to be $1 million to service, is that the Comox Valley? Is that on top of that seems exorbitant to me for a community of this size. So yeah, I think if we can get together with the other municipalities and come up with some kind of solution that will work for all of us, it's clearly a need.
Councillor Spruill.
I'm thankful for Amanda bringing this issue up. It's something we haven't really talked about much, but certainly it would be really helpful to have somebody who is experienced in working with people with addiction or any kind of mental stress problems. So I think working with the other municipalities is a solution, because to make it more affordable, and really it's not very far from one center to the other. So I think that would be more what we're looking at. I don't know anything about those other models, Cahoots and PAC, but there seem to be organizations that can be of help to us. So I thank people for bringing this up.
Just on a side note, that I had a telephone conversation in just after COVID was announced about mental health services in Cumberland. And I was going after an office space in the Cumberland Health Center. And because Island Health owns that building and there is space available to put a mental health worker in there. And because of COVID, they weren't wanting to offer office space at that point. They wanted things to be dealt with through teleconferencing and Zoom. And so I accepted that, but in the realization that a lot of people that have need do not have access to phone or computers. And so there is a gap there. And so I actually emailed Island Health and told them that I wanted to pursue this further. And they told me to talk to Lisa Murphy, the regional director. So that's what I'm going to be doing again, is talking to her about the need for Cumberland, because it's great for the Comox Valley, but we need it here in the village also. And so that's the pursuit that I'm going to follow up, and I'll let you know how I make out. So would somebody like to make a motion on what we can do? Or Councillor Sullivan, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate some of the stuff and thank Amanda for bringing this up. I know that the individual she's speaking about, I've had a couple of interactions with this person, and it's definitely very sad that we really don't have the resources to figure this out, especially for this specific person that I know has been involved in a lot of mischief in town, and maybe calling the police is not the best way to go about it. And I do agree with Councillor Kettler that $1 million seems very expensive. And we'd have to obviously have more information about the app and the Cahoots and stuff moving forward. But I think this is something that we really need to get on top of quickly, and just sort of start this process of getting this sorted out for this individual specifically, and for those more individuals to follow.
So Councillor Brown, yes?
I'll make a motion that we set up a meeting with Island Health and the other municipalities to discuss which programs might work best for all of us.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Reports. The council received the 2019 Statement of Financial Information SOFI report. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Yes, Clayton, you are going to do the report?
Yes, Your Worship. So as I mentioned, our CFO is not here today, so I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll do my best to answer those questions relating to the report in front of you.
You're waiting for questions? Who has a question? Councillor.
I did, but now I only have it on electronic meeting, and for some reason it's not coming up. So. But our CFO isn't here anyway, so I'll just have to save it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So someone like to make the motion? Page 2.
That council approved the Corporation of the Village of Cumberland 2019 Statement of Financial Information for filing with the ministry. Is that the end of it? That is, yeah.
Yes. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have recommend that council receive the progress update on wastewater upgrade project report for information. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Oh, there you are, Paul. Welcome. It's your turn.
Yes. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to be back in front of Cumberland Council, and if I'm not in Cumberland. Yes, it's been a while since I've had my last project update, which was actually October last year. In fact, after we got the good news about funding. So the intention of this report was just to give you an update on what has and hasn't happened. Like everything else, there's been some delays because of COVID. But we are getting some movement going now. So I'm not sure under this meeting format if you want me to summarize the report or if you've all had sufficient chance to read it. If I just take questions as Clayton did just on the previous one, I'll take some direction there, Your Worship, as to how to see it.
It would be nice to have a little bit of a summary because it's been a long time since anything was about the project is discussed. So give the people that are watching this an overview of what we're discussing.
Certainly, thank you. So as we all know, it's been a long time, a 20-year process to come up with a plan for the wastewater project, which we now have. We came up with our plan in 2018. We applied for funding back then, and we got approval of a couple of different funding things confirmed in September of last year. So that's great. The project's now fully funded, and we're ready to move forward. With the project, we talk about it in terms of three components, and this is the way we have discussed it for the last couple of years and will be for moving forward. The lagoon upgrades, which is the major part of the project. That's where we actually do recruitment that's going on to achieve regulatory compliance. Of course, we're out of compliance and have been for many years. So the lagoon upgrades is the major part there, and table 1 in my report. That's about $6.7 million worth of work to do that. The second component, the biochar media reed bed, which will be a constructed wetland with the charcoal media that filters the water and removes pharmaceuticals, roughly a $1 million component. And a key point, that is something because Cumberland wanted to do it, an aspirational goal to have high quality treatment and to use a naturalized system, but it's not actually a regulatory requirement. So this was a case of going above and beyond because we wanted to. And then the wetlands enhancement component is to use the treated water to then irrigate the wetland and restore natural wet conditions to it. So that's actually use of the reclaimed water instead of putting it directly into the creek. So those two, we have them at $1 million components, and there'll be some more detailed design work to go on over the next year on those parts. And then in terms of our budget, we just have another $1 billion for everything else. And I note from your one of the earlier agenda items here, you were saying $1 million seems like a lot for what the project was. In this case, it's amazing to think we have $1 million just for ancillary costs, but at 10% of the project, that's actually about normal. So three components: lagoon upgrades, the reed bed, and the wetlands. And the lagoon upgrades is the one where we are under the regulatory microscope to get it done. So where we're at now is we want to get moving on the whole project. We've had some delays while almost everything's stopped because of COVID-19. We're ready to get going again. We had wanted to procure the project as a design build process to basically give them our LWMP report and say, here is our concept, and give us proposals to turn it into reality. But what's happened is we've moved forward over the last couple of years. A few more things have happened and a few more details sort of get resolved. And our project is more prescriptive. There's not much freedom now for design build. And instead, we're looking at the construction management procurement model, which I understand is what's been done with the fire hall. So it's a change in approach, and we had a project risk workshop with Collier's project leaders, who are professional project managers, to talk about the project status and its risks and the procurement models. And when we say risks, it doesn't mean that there's a risk that this thing won't work or that we won't ever meet the permit, but it's really talking about the classic things of the cost and the schedule and the quality and content of the project, which is most important and which ones do we have some flexibility on. And the conclusion from this is where we're at now, the best way to move forward is a construction management approach, because what we've got here is a retrofit project. We need some flexibility to handle the unknown conditions we'll come up with when we have to do tie-ins to this pipe or change the lagoon wall and so on. And so that's an important change. We can't really treat it just as a greenfield project. So that's the major change that's happened there. And the construction management, where we would hire the project manager and the design engineer and the general contractor and all work together, and the project's executed as a series of work packages. You could almost say it's like a whole bunch of change orders, but in a managed way. And the consensus decision from this workshop is that is the best way forward. So we're looking at that, and then hiring a project manager for it, and we'll come back to council in September with a request for decision on that. So then just for the schedule, the project expected to take 4 years from completion. That was from when we got our funding. So we're already a year into that. Our target for completion remains September of 2022. That's a funding deadline. And what's really changed is we'd wanted to get the lagoon upgrades up and running for the summer of next year. We probably won't be able to achieve that. And they can be during the winter or in the summer of 2022. It doesn't really matter. Earlier is always better. What matters is that we can't commission the biochar reed bed or the wetland until the lagoon upgrades are completed. We have to have a disinfected, permit compliant, clean water to go to the reed bed and the wetland. So I'd wanted to have a year of operating with upgraded lagoon before we did the reed bed and the wetland, but that may not happen. We've also had the biologists out there looking at the wetlands, and I had the privilege of going out there with them and walking through the reed canary grass and all sorts of other wonderful vegetation, looking at the wetland areas. So we're working on that, and we'll have some updates to come. But the main thing is, the timeline for implementation of the lagoon upgrades or commissioning is, we expect it now to be in 2022. Public engagement. So that's the plan of what we want to do. We haven't actually had any public engagement activities since the information packages for the referendum last year, and that's because nothing much has changed. So my plan here is, once we've got our team hired and we get going on doing some more detailed design, and we have then a conceptual site layout, we can come back to the public to inform them, here is what's going on. Right now, there's sort of no new information to give, other than that things slowed down as did everything else. So we will come back with that, and I expect that to be in first half of next year. And then for the wetlands part, we can actually get public input as to how we're going to do this, and things like the wetlands enhancement we want to do, and walking trails and recreational amenities. So that part is yet to come, and we'll actually have an input process into that. And that'll be for the second half of next year. And then a third and future part, we still have a regulatory authorization process to complete. And this would be in 2024 or 5, either our LWMP or registration under the municipal water regulation. Either way, at that point, once our lagoons are up and running and everything's meeting the rules, we'll have some further public engagement at that point. So that's roughly what will happen over the next 3 years for public engagement. And then the final part here in the report, the financial implications. Our project budget, 9.7 million. We're fortunate to have 7.1 million in funding out of the provincial and federal governments. And then with the funding out of Green Municipal Fund, a loan and then a grant for 15% of the loan amount, we've structured this now to be to borrow the entire remaining part rather than using Cumberland's reserves, and that maximises the GMF grant at 337,000. So our project budget still remains 9.7 million. We'll end up with a $2.2 million long-term loan, and if it goes to plan, there's $0 out of Cumberland's wastewater reserves, and that money can then be used for other wastewater projects like the storm sewer separation, which does remain important. So that's where we're at there on the project. I think that's the summary of how things are going. We still certainly intend to achieve these strategic objectives. It's just as with other things, this has been a strange year for getting rolling on projects. And that's my summary. Thank you very much.
Okay, members of council, I'm sure the hands are going up. Councillor Brown.
So I know, I understand this isn't a full budget, but what's your contingency, knowing that these sorts of projects generally don't go as smoothly and already not going as smoothly given the current situation? So how much leeway do we have in the budget?
It's a good question. We had built in a 20% contingency into all of those costs. So the 9.7 includes that. And yeah, that was in there from the start. We had done enough work in the LWMP process to have a good idea of what we wanted to do, the treatment process. So there was a good estimating of costs there. The reed bed and the wetland components, a different approach. We've just drawn the line at $1 million for each and said we do as much as that $1 million buys us. So a different way of managing that. You could say there's no contingency. We just stop there. So that's where we're at there. The real contingency that we've used is actually our time. So we've hardly spent any money today. It's just that we've had a period with not much happening. So yeah, that's unfortunate. But in terms of the budget, we haven't actually used much, nor are we. There is no greater risk of cost overrun than what there was 6 months ago, I'm happy to say. The real issue is we just need to get going and actually start doing work, which involves spending the money. So,
okay, and can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
I'm just wondering about the seasonality of it and whether that is a thing for these types of projects. Like, can you be building in winter as well, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Most things can carry on over the winter. It's fortunate it's not like Alberta where the ground freezes solid. It's obviously easier for certain things like concrete work to be doing it in out of the winter. So our plan would be to have that sort of stuff happening next summer. But for example, the operations building that has to be built, not the complexity of your fire hall project, but it might be one that gets started in the summer and completed over the winter, and that's not a problem. And most of the lagoon components, there's a certain amount of work that is ideally done in the summer, but we're confident that if we need to do it in winter, as long as it's not snowbound, that it can be done. And even if it is snowbound, it's not a long delay like in other parts of the country. So that's why if it was start to finish without seasons, we might say we'd end up commissioning in the winter of 21-22. And if certain things had to wait, then would be into the summer. So we're aware of it, but we don't think it's a problem at the moment.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, hey Paul, it's great to see you. It's been a while. Just a big shout out to the Wastewater Advisory Committee. Hopefully some of them are watching. This is super exciting news. I'm really happy to hear that we're still on target for time. And I'm just wondering if you have any feeling of, will there be some sort of extensions for COVID if that kind of push comes to shove at the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure there will. the deadline for funding for the federal funding is March of 2024. So that one is not at risk. Green Municipal Fund, a little bit different. They say 3 years from when they approved the funding, and they approved it back in September of 2018 because we'd applied early. So we actually already went for a 1-year extension from them, which we have. That takes us to September of 2022. And I'm sure Federation of Canadian Municipalities has done extensive stuff, is doing extensive stuff with municipalities about COVID and the way it impacts everything. So if we needed to, I'm sure there'd be clemency for that reason. That said, our objective is to avoid that. And at this stage, I'm still pretty confident we can get it all done. It's just going to be possibly not the elegant 1-2 execution that I wanted. But I think, yeah, all governments are well aware of how COVID stopped everything, and that was by design. So yes, it would be. I'd be surprised if they said no.
Yeah, and just to comment that I'm very excited that the wastewater reserves are not being used. That's definitely news and very good news. So thanks for that.
Councillor, sorry. Go ahead. Okay, Councillor Spruill.
Yeah. Hi, Paul. Great to see you. You can hear me now, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I can't tell. You talk about the major time driver is the need to achieve provincial regulatory permit compliance to avoid further fines. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, and will we be moving fast enough to satisfy them?
So that is another good question. I'm getting lots of them tonight. So we had the mediation with the province last year about the administrative penalty, and the agreement that was negotiated, and I understand it's still, some details are still being finalised, but essentially said Cumberland will pay part of the fine, and in the meantime make all good efforts to get things implemented, get the permit compliance achieved and registered under the current regulations, meaning either municipal wastewater regulation or liquid waste management plan, by the end of 2025. Right, and if that is achieved, then the other half of the fine doesn't get paid, effectively allowing that money to go to the project. So in theory, we've actually got all of that time. Now, in reality, what we need is to have the project up and running and demonstrated performance for a year or two to monitor it and show that we are meeting the environmental needs of the current requirements. So practically speaking, we still want this implemented by the end of 2023. That's a year later than what our funding timeline is. And as long as we get going here on construction, I don't think we'll have the province at us for being out of compliance on the treatment quality. I will add, we do remain out of compliance on the winter flows, the maximum flows, and the only way we get around that is when we register under the new regulations, which doesn't specify a maximum flow, but specifies a level of treatment for the flow, which we'll achieve. So we're still a long-winded answer to your question, but yes, we're still in good shape there with the province. And for Clayton, is there anything else you want to add about the administrative penalty there?
No, I think you've covered off. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, Paul. One, is there a need to keep the committee moving forward, or is it timely that we let them go, or what is your recommendation?
The LWM, the Wastewater Advisory Committee? Yes. I think officially we should probably wrap up that committee. I would like to, I'd wanted to have one last pat ourselves on the back meeting once we had our funding and stuff. And perhaps the appropriate time to do that would be early next year, once we have the project team on board and we've got the project rolling and tied in actually with the public engagement we'd like to do. I think officially there is nothing for that committee to do until we restart the LWMP process, if that's the regulatory route we'll go, and that would be in 2024. So I think it would be better to wrap this up, and then when the time comes to reconstitute a new committee. Yeah, this one's already been in place for 4 years, and it's probably time to yeah, relieve the committee members from any further obligations for the moment. For the public input about the wetlands, we might yet do a little separate committee about, yeah, probably for different reasons. So I think,
Sorry, we couldn't understand what you said.
for the wetland public input, we might yet do a separate committee for seeking input on the wetlands. That's a decision we'll look at early next year, but that wouldn't be the same committee. It was struck for different reasons. So I think the LWMP committee should be wrapped up, and it's one of the housekeeping matters I intend to address once we have the project management happening, and our public engagement plan would then wrap up the committee.
Okay, and project manager, do you think that we're going to be able to find somebody on the island, or do you think it's going to be, we're going to have to go further than that?
The company that gave us the workshop, Colliers, like they're a nationwide company, and they actually have an office in Vancouver. So there's an example of a very good company that can do it. They're represented here. There are some individuals on the island that operate as project managers, and then you have other engineering companies like Stantec and WSP and Associated Engineering that act as engineers and project managers. McElhaney too. So some of them have representation on the island, but we'll basically, with the staff, with Leighton, Rob and Michelle, we're going to nut this one out over the next month, and we'll come back to you next month as to how we want to proceed. It is ideal that whoever they are, that they have at least some local representation, but so the leading candidate certainly does, and we'll just have to see where it is with what others there might be.
Okay, Councillor Kettler, did you have some questions? Your microphone's off.
Is that better?
That's
Yes.
better.
I'm on my phone now because my internet, for whatever reason, it went out. So I was a little concerned about the I don't know how much I missed there, but I was a little concerned about the move from the design build to the construction management. I think there's a lot of security in the design build around price and timing, and not so much with the construction management. And I feel like we'll really have to be on top of things. You know, I'm hoping that we're on it, so that we don't have cost and time overruns.
That was the major focus of this workshop that we had, and the challenge with the design build is we would have to actually do a lot more work here for the procurement process, and in particular investigating the site conditions so that the proponents have got enough information to make meaningful proposals. The challenge is when it comes to the unknown conditions, and particularly tying into this pipe or digging up part of the lagoon, we've got to go through the walls between them. So the more unknowns there are for a design build, the more margin they put into their price. So the construction management approach is a better way when it's more of a retrofit nature, and it's really where we've landed. So that was the major topic of conversation there. And I think the best way we've managed the costs is in identifying this project, the lagoon upgrade path, as opposed to a mechanical treatment plant. The cost for the components that we're going to put in are fairly well known. So we think we've reduced the risk as much as we can to date. But we do take the point, and that was our concern too, if we're giving up the cost control, yeah, that we are still able to manage it. So that's why we'd engage the professional project manager to do just that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Paul. That was very interesting and very timely. And I know it's a tremendous amount of work, but thank you very much for the
Well, it's
update.
great to be back, and I look forward to being back in front of council in the near future with some decisions. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Paul.
Okay, next, the council received the 2020 Roads and Utilities Capital Works Project Report.
Move receipt.
Second.
Councillor Brown. Okay, just a minute. Okay,
There you are.
it's really acting up tonight. People are disappearing and their voices aren't coming and you can't, yeah, it's really interesting. So we're on to Rob. Did I
I'll
ask
move-
everybody in
I'll
favor?
move. Oh,
You move?
I'll move receipt.
Oh, didn't we already do that?
Councillor.
Did we?
Sproul?
Oops. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's when I lost the picture.
Oh,
I lost my connection also. So we're back on again. Okay. Next, hello, Rob. I hope you're relaxed and comfortable.
I am, thank you. Yeah, I've actually got my I got my leg up right now in a
Good. good.
recliner. So if I look too casual, I apologize.
Yes. You're recuperating, but you're hard at work.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. I'm on. Well, it's good to see everyone. So the report I got tonight is there's two parts to the report. One part of the report is dealing with what we've done in the past, bundled projects, utility and roads projects to attract more bidders and to create more competitive bidding and realize some better pricing on our projects. So the first part of the report deals with our 2020 roads and utilities tender that we put out. And then the other part of the report also deals with a pavement strategy we were attempting to put together that council approved in the budget for the next 4 years, microsurfacing. There's been some changes on that front, and I'll get to that after I talk to the roads and utilities tender. So within the report, you can see on page 205 of the report or page 70 of the agenda, a list of projects that were included within the tender that we put out this year. And so there's the we call it the 6th Street area. There's the lane north of or south of Dunsmuir. There's some storm and sanitary. And then there's some storm and sanitary down 6th Street. And then there's the road reconstruction on Derwent Avenue. That road's in really rough shape. So we call it the 6th Street area. There's Maryport from 3rd to 4th. Originally we had full road reconstruction and storm sewer, but we've eliminated the storm sewer because there is an existing storm sewer there now, and it's actually in not bad shape. It's a corrugated steel pipe. We call it CSP for abbreviation. It's in pretty decent shape, and we thought, we will tap into that as part of our design and try and reallocate funds elsewhere. Then we have a small section of storm drainage we want to install behind the museum. As you may or may not be aware, some of the drainage was tapped into the museum perimeter drain that actually runs out to a catch basin at the intersection of First and Dunsmuir, and we've inundated that system over the years. It backs up, it causes flooding the museum, and we really need to put a proper storm drainage in there. So we included that one as optional work within the tender. And then there's the Windermere project. And so the Windermere project kind of was two separate projects that kind of morphed into one, and then there was some additional scope added as we got into the design. And so originally we had water and storm drainage designed to come up First Street from Maryport to Windermere, with the water main carrying on to Ulverston. So that was to remove some old 50 millimeter galvanized pipe that we've made numerous repairs on in the last 4 or 5 years. It needs to get replaced. And it also provides looping to the 8-inch water main on Ulverston. So it's to improve fire flows, and it's to replace old decrepit water main pipe. The storm sewer was to come up First Street to deal with a major drainage issue because the water comes down the lane between the houses on First Street and the junior high school. It floods the lady out in the corner, and then it comes down First Street. So those projects were then kind of tied in with the sidewalk upgrades on Windermere, because we're also trying to deal with road grades and design curb and gutter and sidewalk. And, you know, as we got into it more, the consultant and staff discussed the challenges around some of the road grades. And so they really recommended that we extend the storm sewer up 2nd Street, and we look at rebuilding the street at the same time with a gutter on the other side so that we capture everything, deal with it kind of in one fell swoop. And just so council's aware, you may or not be aware, but that the intersections at both First and Windermere and 2nd and Windermere are really poor shape. They just keep falling apart. We've tried to patch them over and over. So that stretch of road is bad. The sidewalk upgrades were part of the safe travel route planning with the school district. And then there's the old trees. I wish Judy was here, but the old trees along the north side of the road boulevard on Windermere, we're trying to pull the asphalt away from them so we can actually preserve those trees as well. So it's kind of a multifaceted project. So within the tender, there was optional work we allowed the prospective bidders to bid on. I've kind of summarized some of the costs in there. From my perspective, it would be nice to get, rebuild the road now. We're going to have to shortly down the road here, but no pun intended. But, we can pull some extra funding from reserves to get this done now, and then kind of reassess where we are with our roads and utilities, because the challenge is the prices keep going up. Our budget prices, we have to revisit those, and I haven't had time, to be honest with you, to try and keep up with some of this asset management stuff. So that's kind of the summary. The additional scope of work is $282,923. The bid price from Luco was $820,312, as you can see in the report. And Luco was $100,000 lower in their bid price. The bid price that included the optional work than the next closest bidder. So that kind of, maybe what we'll do is we'll pause there, and I'll try and answer any questions council has on that portion of the report, and then we'll move on to the microservicing.
Who would like, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but maybe just for clarity and for the people watching, the difference between the microsurface work that you wanted to do and the new work, what materially, what's that difference? Not so much in price, but in the repair to the road or the maintenance of the road.
It's really a different, it's a different type of product. So the microsurfacing is it's a thinner, I guess, more complex kind of sealant. And the problem is that the only company that does it locally is on the mainland, and their mob and demob costs are kind of, I've been trying to work on this for a couple of years, and the prices keep going up, and they're beyond what we have for budget. The chip seal is commonly used actually in the valley here. You can drive a number of roads that have been chip sealed, whether they're gravel roads that have been chip sealed or asphalt that's been chip sealed. Down by the Royston Elementary School in that area, there's some chip sealed roads down there. It's the highway contractor uses that product all the time. And so really, reviewing these two products, the recommendation was to go with a chip seal versus the microsurfacing for Union Road and and Comox Lake Road, but it's more of a, the microsurfacing is more of an epoxy type product. It doesn't use a asphalt type emulsion product, whereas the chip seal does.
Okay, so the microsurfacing goes over the entire surface and the chip seal just goes in the cracks, and it's that.
No,
Oh,
chip,
it's not.
chip seals edge to edge, same application.
Okay. Okay, so then my other question is for Windermere, and also second, so first question for clarity, are you planning to pave down Second when you do Windermere, or is that a separate project?
No, there wouldn't be any paving involved with Second Street, so the storm sewer would extend up the shoulder of Second Street.
Okay. That's great. And then, yeah, I see the trees that we're trying to protect in front of the lodge parking lot, and I appreciate that. They're actually surrounded by asphalt right now. So we're thinking the sidewalk would go along the high side and the gutter would go on the low side to catch the water, yeah?
That is a really good question.
Because there's just one
bear with me.
stretch of sidewalk on Windermere at the corner of, I think it's First.
Yeah, we've tried to, I think the curb and gutter and the sidewalk are pulled back from the trees. I think the idea was to get away with infrastructure from the trees. Sorry, I'm scaring you guys by pulling this close to my face. So I think the idea is to actually not put the sidewalk separate from the curb and gutter. It's all one piece, but it's pulled back from the trees so that we can actually landscape with some topsoil and whatever mulch or whatever they've prescribed in the design.
Okay. Okay, great. And that said, then that sidewalk would be continued all the way to the school in that little stretch.
Correct. It's the full block and a half.
Okay, excellent.
And there'll be new crosswalk and let downs and signage at the intersections as well. It's specifically First and Windermere.
Okay, and that's the support that ICBC is offering, that bit.
And they're recognizing that this is a safety improvement for the village, the sidewalk and the signage and the crosswalks. So they're put some funding towards it.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Councillor Spruill?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm always amazed when I read these lists of priorities. I mean, like this section of a laneway, half a block of that. I don't honestly know how you can figure that out. And I'm sad that we can't do a whole lot more. I think if there was any other municipality, they would do the whole block. But this laneway, but we don't have the resources. So you've really prioritized the ones that need it. I'm interested in the Comox Lake Road because I see it so much, and it is a terrible mess in places, near Jumbo's cabin particularly. But with the chip seal, what happens about these big holes in the road? There's big basins full of broken asphalt. How does the chip seal deal with that, or the rocks that are pushing it on a continual level?
That's a really good question. So part of the plan to chip seal that road is the village crews, our public works crews, will go in and they'll do some hot asphalt patching in some areas, and then some of the bigger areas where the shoulder's really fallen off, we'll actually fill that with gravel, and we'll do a double overlay. So it's common to do this even with hot asphalt, but you'll do a level course first. So you'll kind of fill in any divots and holes and seal stuff, and then you'll do a final coat over top of that. That's the plan here, is to do kind of two overlays. One's kind of what we call a level course, and then a final cap. So the road won't be perfect, but the intent is to seal the road and gain some more longevity out of it, because there's sections that are actually okay, but there's so many cracks and areas falling apart that we have to use some kind of a strategy to keep it in a holding pattern.
Councillor Sullivan?
Hey, Rob, thanks for this. It was good to see you today. It's been a long time. I just want to put forward my support for the extra work. I think it's really important that we just get as much done as quickly as possible due to the rising prices that just seem to skyrocket nonstop. So I support the optional work. And I really like page 73. I like the site plan an awful lot, but I'm just wondering maybe for future site plans if we could get a couple sizes bigger, because you can't really read the legend whatsoever. And I mean, it's pretty, it's sort of evident what's going on here, but I wouldn't mind if the detail was actually, you could actually see what the details were. That's it.
Noted.
Okay.
Councillor Brown, you had a question? Oh, sorry, Councillor Kettler, but Brown first. I saw her.
Oh,
Did you
sorry,
have
go
your-
ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councillor.
Yeah, she hasn't spoken yet, so go ahead, Councillor Kettler.
Thank you. So I just had a question, I guess it's a follow-up to Councillor Brown about 2nd Street. So later on in this agenda, we have the rezoning application for the affordable housing, and they're going to want to do on-street parking. It would make sense if we would do any upgrades to 2nd Street at the same time as they're doing that on-street parking. And I'm wondering if 2nd Street is in the list, near the top, so that so when that does roll around, that we can coordinate with the proponent there.
Yeah, it's a good point, and unfortunately, 2nd Street isn't at the top of the list. Not to say it can't be in conjunction with this project. There's definitely some challenges with the on-street parking and the condition of that particular street. Beaufort's at basically the top of the list, and so that's on the books for next year. But it might make sense to look at 2nd Street as well from Beaufort, probably all the way through to Windermere. But yeah, that's something staff can review, get back to council on.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Councillor Brown?
You mentioned looping. Can you just explain what looping is? I think it was in reference to the sewer upgrade or the stormwater, sorry?
Oh, no, I was for the water main.
Oh, for the water main, yes.
Yeah, looping does two things. It provides you better fire flows. So anytime you've got a water main that isn't looped, you're only drawing water from one direction. If it's looped, you have better fire flows in that area. And it also improves your water quality, so you don't have stagnant water. So there's a couple benefits with looping.
Awesome. The other thing I was going to ask is I know that big divot that Councillor Sproul mentioned on Comox Lake Road, it actually works quite well as a traffic calming measure, so no worries there. But it's also just ahead of the Orchard Park, which now has like an official entrance to the park onto that road. So is that intended to be a 30-kilometer zone because it's now a street adjacent to a park? And do we have a responsibility to do that, or is that our choice? Because I know parks are 30-kilometer zones, but that was never, because it didn't really have an official, it wasn't on that street, it was on Camp Road.
So I know there's been some discussion about that particular park, and staff will have to have further discussions before we bring something back to council to discuss it more. I mean, the intent is really to seal the surface of the road.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure we're starting basically at Jumbo's cabin. That's where the
Oh,
road is
so
the
you-
word, and heading out. So where it meets, I call it Dunsmuir West, or the end of Camp Road. So we won't be doing that section in front of the park at all.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's something to look at because now, you know, it's a little bit of taking your life in your hands when you're crossing that road at that particular point. It's the corners challenging to see for vehicles and for pedestrians going down towards the swamp. So I'll leave that with you to have another look at. Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to add, Rob?
I don't think so. We got into the microsurfacing and versus chip seal. So I think we've covered everything.
Okay, someone want to move the recommendations?
Sure. I'll move the council approve the award of the 2020 roads and utilities capital works tender to Luco Construction for the mandatory work at a bid price of $820,312. That council approved the award of the additional scope of work to Luco Construction at a cost of $282,923. That council direct staff to reflect the additional funds required to complete either just the mandatory work or both the mandatory and optional work in the next budget amendment. And that council approved the direct award of the road surfacing on the south section of Union Road and on Comox Lake Road to Shades Contracting at a cost of $97,859.
Seconder, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. That council received the Heritage Alteration and Development Variance Permit Application 2731 Dunsmuir Avenue report dated July 28, 2020. Councillor Brown, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Yes, Jude. Karen, sorry. Going back some dates.
Okay, just unmuted myself. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for sticking with it. It's been a long evening already. So I have a few reports. Planning department has been busy. So we'll just start with the Heritage Alteration Permit on 2731 Dunsmuir Avenue. So the staff this is the first time you see this proposal, and staff is recommending a referral to the Heritage Committee of this application. I'll just provide you with a brief summary. It's aside from the Heritage Alteration Permit, which is required along Dunsmuir Avenue in the commercial area. The applicant is also seeking two variances for this project, and one is a parking variance, namely to waive the parking cash in lieu requirement for one parking spot, which is $3,800. And then also to increase the lot coverage from the permitted 75% in the zoning, which is what the zoning bylaw stipulates, to increase our coverage to 87.5%. And both of these are really as a result of the fairly small and narrow lot that the applicant is seeking to develop. You can see the site plan is attached to the report. He is able to accommodate 4 parking spots below the building, in the back of the building, to the lane. And it's fairly tight already, so definitely can't accommodate a further spot. The applicant provided a rationale for why the application to the why he wishes to see the parking cash in lieu fee waived, and you have that in your report, and we'll discuss that also with the APC. Just in summary, this is really to allow, in recognition, the applicant feels that the village is not able to actually offer something in return for that at present. It's a longer term goal to then improve parking for the village, of course, with this cash in lieu fund. So the neighboring property owner has provided a letter of support for the application, which is also attached to this agenda item. And aside from the Heritage Alteration Permit and the Development Variance Permit, the applicant also has 2 other requests which aren't really don't fall into Heritage Alteration Permit, or variance permit type application, but they're nonetheless here and can be considered by council when this comes back to you from the Heritage Committee and the APP. And that's a request for dedicated on-street parking space for the commercial tenant and a dedicated on-street commercial loading space. So we can discuss that further when it comes back, or if you have questions with respect to any of those now, I'm happy to answer.
Questions? Councillor Sullivan?
Well, I definitely support sending this to the Heritage Committee and the APC. Just to address a couple things before we do that, talking about the alteration permit, required to respect the design of adjacent buildings by carrying through a cornice line in the new structure or repeating the window pattern. Just by this picture, I don't think either of those is remotely achieved. And just personally, I was a little bit put off by the language by the proponent, sort of making the decision, telling council what they thought our decisions should be. So that borders on disrespectful in my opinion, but I support sending this to the Heritage Committee and the APC.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I think the conversation about the parking is interesting. He's right. Street parking is in high demand. And where he is not seeing our intention is that the $3,800 for the parking is not to ensure that there is parking on the street. It is to ensure that we have a fund to manage parking in the future. And so I'm not in favor of waiving that. It's only one spot that he's short of. And I'm sure there's a way to create that spot if he wanted to be creative and spend more money, but I think it's probably cheaper to pay the $3,800. So, but I am interested in the loading and commercial parking that he's asking for. Can you speak to that just a bit, Karen?
Yeah, so
we have that in one spot so far, right?
So what he's providing in the back of the building is for the parking for the 4 residential units. It's really hard to fit the space, and he did provide detailed drawings with how vehicles turn in and out of those spaces. It is fairly tight, absolutely. So he's providing stalls for the residential tenants. So what he's requesting is a dedicated parking spot, like a commercial parking spot, I guess, on Dunsmuir or on a side street somewhere for the commercial tenant. And yeah, some larger municipalities have commercial loading zones and unloading zones, but then they are reserved for commercial vehicles at all times to stop and unload, and you cannot park there. So
yeah, so I think that's definitely something for our parking study to look at, that we do have a loading zone, but it's up where it's not really necessary anymore in front of the ILO. So we definitely could use a commercial loading zone in the downtown core. And I think it is important for us to ensure that there is accessible parking on the street. So perhaps it's time for a 2-hour parking limit or something. But that's for another conversation.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, there's always issues with parking. And I think that, the comments about, not being able to meet, zoning requirements, building requirements, parking requirements, it's a very narrow lot. It's a very small lot. So he's trying to do quite a bit and fit quite a bit on a very small lot. And that's not necessarily the village's fault, that he can't fit the things that are required. So yeah, I don't think that the village is being unfair. We apply the same standard to everyone. I think it probably would be unfair if we did give him the commercial zoning spot. There's lots of other commercial, the street is full of them. So, for him to guarantee that to his tenant as a benefit, to them. And I don't know that, yeah, I don't know that that's a fair process, considering all the other commercial entities on Dunsmuir. But it seemed like he was, not willing to provide the parking space required for the building. And on top of that, wanting us to dedicate parking from the public space to the building. So, I don't agree with either of those things.
Councillor Sproul?
Yes, we've talked a lot about parking, and I agree with what councillors have said so far. My concern is whenever I see the drawings, the architectural drawings, like with this one, it doesn't look like it does not look like a heritage building. It looks very modern, and I'm looking at the heritage alteration permit on, page 76. The OCP identifies the street as being unique. The historic form scale is integral. But where is it that we say that we don't like the design, that it's not really a heritage design? And next to that building, which is the extension of Seeds now, which did try to be a heritage design, what with the angles of the roofs, not so flat and squared. Where do we get to say we don't like that design and we don't think it fits at all with the historic nature of the commercial core?
Yeah, to the Mayor and Council, if I can respond to that. Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the review of the Heritage Committee is the design. So sometimes what applicants are seeking to do is perhaps not in the form of the building, but in the building materials and the colors. And they're providing color and material samples to the Heritage Committee as well. They try to reflect some of the heritage features, or by using sort of the window patterns with the mullions at the top with the little squares, rather than a tall window that's just in one single window. And the bricks, so yeah, it has a flat roof. There's other buildings in Dunsmuir that have flat roofs as well, but it is difficult for sure. And I think perhaps it's definitely something that we need to discuss at the Heritage Committee. Potentially the color scheme as well, or it does meet some of the requirements for sure. The downward lighting, the shielded lighting to the gooseneck lights, that kind of thing. There may be some things that can be done for sure to have it fit a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to say my comments. I say no to the zoning of zoning in the front to parking for either the tenant or a loading zone. I think that most business people do not want to park their vehicle in front of their business, because that is left for patrons of their business. They soon learn that it's a small community, and people get word that the owner wants to park in front of their business. It's not a good precedent to set. And as far as loading, I think that's the responsibility of the person building the facility to figure that out. So no to both of the parking things for me. So do we still get to refer it?
And to Mayor and Council, if I may remind you, I'm suggesting to require a neighborhood meeting. So the heritage alteration permit, unlike the DP permits, development permits, doesn't require it, but it's as the option of council. And I think there is a heightened attention to anything that happens on Dunsmuir Avenue, and is of interest not just to the immediate neighbors, but to the community. So we are recommending that the owner, the applicant host a neighborhood meeting, which can be outside on the property. The weather is still fairly stable and fairly good to get some input and provide the detailed drawings. So that's, if you may see that as one of the recommendations.
Okay. So yes, Councillor Brown.
I was going to move the recommendation, but I also saw nothing about accessibility in his plan. So I'd like to add referral to the accessibility committee as well, if we're ready to go there. Yeah. So council will refer the heritage alteration and development variance permit application at 2731 Dunsmuir Avenue report dated July 28th, 2020 to the Heritage Committee for recommendation, and that council refer the development variance permit application 2731 Dunsmuir Avenue report dated July 28th, 2020 to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation, and that council refer the development variance permit application 2731 Dunsmuir Avenue report dated July 28th, 2020 to the Accessibility Committee.
Councillor Kettler seconded. All in favor? Carried.
So we've been meeting for 2 hours, so I need a bio break. So I'm just going to turn my video off for 1 second.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have recommend that council receive the report application development variance permit 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue dated July 27th, 2020. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Okay, Karen.
So this is, sorry, this is for temporary use permit. Am I skipping over something? 1 sec.
No, 6.8.
Oh, okay, you went to 6.8. Okay, I have 6.5. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute.
No, we're at 6.5.
Yeah.
6.5. We just moved 6.5. Didn't we?
No. We're doing 6.7. Where did I?
Or we just moved receipt, sorry, of 6.5.
Yeah,
Here we go.
6.5. Temporary use permit.
Yes. Page 85, Karen.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just look. You might have skipped the page. Okay, it's my confusion. All right. So this is an application for a temporary use permit on 4640 Cumberland Road for Unit 4, which was received by the applicant to permit a fitness, yoga, and dance studio at that on that property. That property is currently zoned in light industrial and does not permit for that type of use. So the applicant has, or applicant and owner have a choice to either apply for rezoning or temporary use permit. And in this case, the application is for a temporary use permit, which would be valid if granted for 3 years. Then the applicant can renew the permit for another 3 years, and or apply to rezone, but the renewal is only possible once. I should also say the applicant is currently operating, and that was the village's understanding, that because they are seeking to get into compliance with the permitting requirements, that our bylaw enforcement efforts at this point are really at the voluntary compliance end of the spectrum. Bylaw enforcement can range anywhere from seeking voluntary compliance to providing a warning and provide ticketing or seeking a court injunction. And usually you start with the voluntary compliance end of the spectrum. So that's where we're at currently. So the applicant has been very cooperative and is seeking to get her permits, including the business licenses. So when we reviewed the official community plan policy on temporary use permits, generally the application does fit what's in the policy for temporary use. Generally, we do prefer rezoning to create certainty, but on the other hand, the temporary use is always there, is a mechanism to test a new use in an existing zone that's currently not permitted for its compatibility with that zone. The other challenge, I think, for the applicant and potentially other applicants with similar businesses is that the zoning bylaw does not actually currently identify yoga, fitness, or dance studio as a use. It would fit under recreational facility, which is currently only permitted in public assembly institutional zone. So we don't really have a zone that explicitly permits this for private business, as the institutional zone is usually for municipalities and institutions. So public assembly would fit there, but it is somewhat limiting. So it's an appropriate application to see if this use might fit into the light industrial zone. I do want to just summarize briefly some of the comments that we have received. This is still in the first phase. It's coming to you, and then we're requesting referral to the Advisory Planning Commission, and the applicant is holding the required meeting for neighborhood input this coming Thursday from 5 to 6. I put the wrong time in the report. It starts at 5, not 6, and goes till 6. So you will receive a full summary of the comments once that meeting has been held, and I may also receive a few more, but I just want to provide these to give you an idea what we've received so far. So I have received a comment by a resident who's concerned that the applicant is already advertising her business without having a business license. As I explained earlier, yes, we did let her operate because she is seeking to come into compliance with our permit requirements. The resident was also concerned, aside of her operating without a license, that the application was made after the initial complaint by that resident, so there was no intent to apply initially, potentially. I can't really comment on that. I don't know that. And the resident also felt that a neighborhood meeting should be held before the report goes to council. Apparently, this might have been the practice in the past, before the first meeting of council. So what we require now is that the meeting be held before a decision is reached by council at the council meeting as part of our process. This requirement can be waived if you wanted to make a decision tonight, but usually our approach is have the applicant hold the meeting, then the comments are received will be brought forward to the APC if the application is referred to the APC for comments, so they can comment also based on the input of the neighbors, and then the whole package comes back to council. So that was some concerns for sure by a neighbor, by a resident about the process. We've also did receive a whole number of comments from residents and users of the yoga and fitness studio who are supportive of that use at that site. So as I said, we'll provide complete comments when a report comes back to you.
Okay, questions from council? Councillor Brown?
This was very interesting because when we were talking about the Bevan, when we were doing the Bevan lands, charrette, it came up that this area, which is now industrial, could move to more of a mixed use, like a Tin Towny kind of area where it could be more diverse use. And then the true industrial uses could move out to Bevan Road. So, I'm not terribly concerned about mixing up these uses at this point, but yes, we absolutely do need to have the proper zoning in place. But I am curious because right next door on I-2 land is a retail bike shop. So do they also have a temporary use permit?
The bike shop is on the same property.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
their retail operation, which is not allowed in an industrial zone.
So the reason, I assume, I wasn't here at the time, that they were not asked to get a temporary use permit or to rezone is that they also fabricate, and the retail is part of the larger operation. So that's my understanding.
Okay, I can't say that I know either way, so I guess that's something for bylaw to look at. So I do know that she starts very early in the morning, and so is there a noise bylaw associated with industrial use, and what time does that start?
You know, off the top of my head, we do have a noise a bylaw. And I think the operating hours are actually quite generous, if I remember correctly, but
Like
is
it would
something
be
like
7 probably, or
it's
8.
quite
okay?
generous. I think it's actually 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Council can restrict operating hours, I believe, as part of granting a business license.
I think as long as the doors, the back doors are, the residential neighbors are only on the one side. So as long as those doors are kept closed. But my other question is just a kind of process thing, because I don't understand how this works. I mean, obviously, if she would come in for a business license and then you would check the zoning and see whether she's legal, but what responsibility does the landowner hold in a situation like that, where he's rented to someone who's clearly not able to operate on his property?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, really, the landowner, the applicant in this case, or someone who's leasing, I would think all parties have responsibility to check whether they have the correct zoning or not for the use. So I can't really say who dropped the ball, but I would say everyone has some responsibility for sure to check whether to either convey the information or to check what the appropriate use or the permitted uses are on a property. I mean, we run into that once in a while with bylaw enforcement, right? So we're seeking bring people in compliance in the long term, so we don't have too many of these. But yeah, I wouldn't say one has more responsibility than the other. I would think they both do, for sure.
Okay, and then my final concern is just the timeline. I know we're rushing, we're kind of pushing it through so that she can continue to operate, because it's obviously having some positive reception. But we're getting it to APC, them getting all the comments, her public meeting, and that's all going to get back to us in time. Yes?
Well, if it would make the APC meeting in September, and then would come to council towards the end of September if all the meetings line up.
Yeah, so I think it's the 10th and the 14th. The APC is on the 10th and the council meeting's on the 14th. So it's just a tight turnaround, and I'm seeing that APC minutes are taking quite a while to get. They're obviously not a priority. The priority is to get the work done, but so that I'm just worried about that timeline, that we are actually respecting the work that the APC is doing and having it considered in a timely manner.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's tight to come back to council with the APC recommendation would miss the agenda. So they would come back to council on the 28th, September 28th. And the reason sometimes what we report on the APC recommendation at the next council meeting, we don't share the minutes because they're draft, and then the minutes get approved by the APC at their next meeting, which sometimes or perhaps frequently is after your council meeting, because they meet monthly.
Yeah.
So that's correct. So if they meet on the 10th, then you would not get the minutes on the 28th of September. You would get the minutes at the October meeting after they've had a chance to approve their minutes again. So yes, we're always out. We're always behind in with you actually seeing the minutes. You would be shared the recommendation, and if there's comments a part of the discussion, I'm happy to provide those as well, actually. Usually the secretary is very efficient. She turns around within a couple of days, and then we call it a draft. So I can talk to the chair about that. We can perhaps share some of the comments if there's additional comments as draft comments verbally.
Yeah, or maybe they can approve their minutes via email or some such arrangement. I feel like I just feel like we need to respect the work that they're doing and get their feedback in a timely manner. And I understand that there's complications around the minutes and the turnaround and the draft and all of that stuff. So yeah, I just encourage you guys to figure out another some way to make that more efficient for everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councillor Kettler?
Well, sorry, I missed part of the presentation again because now that I'm on my phone, my battery was dying. But I did have the opportunity to read the report. I guess one of the concerns would be about the noise and that back door. I could see it being an exercise facility, and in light of having COVID, you know, people really want a lot of airflow through their facilities, that the doors would likely be open, and that might cause some issues with noise if they're, you know, exercising to music or that sort of thing. So, so I do have a little bit of concern about that. Also, you know, just that it's a bit of a strange way to get rezoned. I know we're giving, you know, we're looking at a temporary use permit, but from the property owner, as Councillor Brown alluded to, is already doing, you know, retail in industrial space, and then leases, you know, this other space for another non-industrial use, and it's just a little bit, I don't know, not a great situation to put council in. But I definitely support, you know, referring it to APC and getting their comments.
Yeah, staff have approached the owner too, to encourage the owner to apply for rezoning of the property, based on, you know, they're kind of an interesting set of units back there. Who knows what other potential uses could go in there. So it would be in everyone's interest if he goes through a rezoning process. So yeah, I hope it's not that we're going to be issuing more temporary use permits or even renewing this one. Our intention is to seek to have the owner apply for rezoning and get broader community input on what's appropriate for that site.
Councillor Sullivan?
I'll move the motion if we want. Is everybody finished?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll move that we refer the application for a temporary use permit for Unit 4, 4640 Cumberland Road, report dated July 28th, 2020 to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation, and that staff include a definition for private fitness facilities in a future update of the zoning bylaw and explore other zones where this use could be permitted.
Seconder? Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the report application for an OCP amendment and rezoning of 3339, 3341, 3345, 2nd Street, dated July 28, 2020.
Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
To Mayor and Council. So this application is to rezone 3 properties adjacent to each other located on 2nd Street. The intent is also for the applicant to consolidate the lots into a single lot, which is the subdivision process. But first they have to go through this rezoning. Well, they have to go through the rezoning process to do what they wish to do on the site, which is to develop a 23-unit affordable housing project. The owner of the property is the Vancouver Island Health Authority. There is an agreement on a title with the owner, with the Island Health, that the property was to be used for affordable housing within with an undefined, unspecified period of time, or that it would revert back to the village. And perhaps the Manager of Development Services, I didn't get that quite right, can interject here, but so there was an intent expressed for those 3 properties a number of years ago when that agreement was drafted. The applicants are the Comox Valley Transition Society and Dawn to Dawn. two societies that have working together, and they would be applying to BC Housing if the rezoning is accepted to fund a project and permit building the project. So yeah, the rental unit, it would be affordable rentals, and the unit breakdown would be one bedroom, 4 2 bedrooms, 15 3 bedrooms, and 3 4-bedroom units. So it's really catering towards families. So the official community plan policy does generally support affordable housing within the village, especially rental housing. Together with the rezoning application, if the rezoning goes through at the same time, and the OCP amendment would nonetheless be required because the site is currently designated as residential infill and zoned as R1A infill residential zone in the zoning bylaw. So it's both an OCP and rezoning, is both are required. And the same time, staff would also amend the development permit area for that to apply a multifamily development permit on that site to allow us to review some other items and with the applicant, so and have them meet those requirements. So when we looked at our current zoning, what zoning are they actually applying for? None of our current multifamily residential zones would provide them with the number of units that they wish to develop on the site. So a rezoning to allow what they are proposing would require creation of a new zone, which I include in the staff report, would be an RM4, just to number our multifamily zones very creatively in order from 1 to 4. Anyways, so that would accommodate that level of density with the density bonus. So if there was not to be, we can use the zone potentially again in other, based on applications required. The density at this site would be permitted because they're developing affordable housing units. There's a 20% density bonus. So when I calculated what they could do, that is would be only permitted on that site because it's affordable housing. So they would get that density bonus. Otherwise, the density would be a little lower. The RM4 zone as proposed would only permit 18 units otherwise without the density bonus that's written into the zone. Currently, the way I have the zone, the applicant would also require to apply for variance. And I know this is strange. Why wouldn't we create a zone that allows the rear setback to be what exactly they need? So the thinking here is that if we use that zone again, it's really too small a setback. It works on this site because it sets the back property, the units, the apartment building back from the front. So it's less imposing on the streetscape. And because it's set back against a parking lot, the setback, the tight setback that they're requiring, the variance is acceptable from staff perspective because there's a parking lot. They're not intruding with a large building onto a rear yard of, say, a residential property. But generally, we don't like that kind of setback in a zone. So they'd be applying for variance. They get the variance on that site. Parking currently, they would be provided, they would need 23 vehicle parking stalls. They are proposing provide 8 on site with access from the VIA driveway. And as a conditional on rezoning, we would request that VIA or confirm that they approve that. And then they're asking for cash only for 15 stalls, which they would, we could ask for as part of the rezoning to be provided in the form of angle parking off 2nd Street. And we're waiting for the applicant, and this would be part of the next, we're expecting this when it goes forward to the, for the DP, we would ask that they provide us with a layout on the street to make sure we can fit this. It looks like right now it could fit. The applicant has designed the building to be able to retain the really large mature Douglas fir tree that's on the property. And some of the trees that are on the side towards the VIA driveway, the also significantly sized, but not quite as massive firs. So this does meet our the village's urban forest management plan goals of containing canopy cover. even though it's a fairly small lot. As you might see on the drawings that are attached, the canopy is quite large of that one fir tree that's to be retained. Right now, because our OCP identifies affordable housing as an amenity, staff hasn't contemplated recommending an additional amenity of the applicant, because affordable housing is one of our key amenities, and it would increase the cost. However, what we are looking at asking them to do is to construct the angle parking and the sidewalk behind, to provide for better traffic circulation, a safe pedestrian passage around the parking areas. Yeah, so perhaps what I could do is just, we have received some preliminary comments. I know residents who might be watching are keen on hearing them reported. We will provide those in detail to the APC and when it comes back to you, but I'll just provide you with a really brief summary so you have an idea of what the comments were at this point. And we may be getting more. So one was the project as depicted and described is far too large for the 3 lots adjacent to our 2 properties. There was also concern about traffic, existing infrastructure, storm and sewer pipes, upgrade and sidewalks, which some of that can be addressed as part of the development. Current road conditions, noise and light pollution from the property, and just as if you put 23 families on a smaller property, you do need more green space. So how is that going to be accommodated? There's also a question regarding the benefits achieved for the village from the rezoning. Other comments received were height and size of the building, also the number of units. 3 stories were found to be too high. There was concern about fire safety. I should say that all BC Housing projects if this receives funding by BC Housing, are required to be sprinklered. And I think any multifamily buildings now are. But nonetheless, there's also concerns about, the parking and play space for kids, potential of everyone owning a dog. So the applicants themselves have also collected comments. They did visit a lot of the neighbors and some expressed similar concerns. Others were quite positive and asked when people who they know could move in. So the applicant is hosting a public information meeting on Thursday, August 27th from 9 to 12 noon. So we will have more comments as a result of that meeting. They've also sent out flyers and notices. So at this point, we are asking referral of the application to the Advisory Planning Commission for comments and recommendation. You may also want to refer to the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee for comment. The applicant is seeking progress on this application. I think it is a council policy, and I put this application on the top of my pile because it is a council policy to process affordable housing applications, put them at the top of the list. So that's what we have been doing. And that's also recognition that they're seeking funding from BC Housing at an upcoming funding deadline. Having said that, it needs to go through the public process, and I think it's really important to understand the neighbors' concerns and see whether the applicant can address those. If you have questions, happy to answer.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, just the meeting is the 27th of August, 9 to 12. Is that just on site there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sproul? Your microphone's not on. There you go.
There it is. I do agree that we need to move ahead on this because we are in need for this, and our policy is in place. Well, the wording that we put this kind of application to the forefront. So I'm really would be happy to move this on as soon as possible.
Okay. Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I'm super happy to see this come forward. We've been working on it for a really long time. The Affordable Housing Committee, we did a lot of advocacy, and we did our own, we paid a consultant back in 2016 to do housing assessment then, And we've really, I feel, laid the groundwork for this, had lots of conversations with BC Housing. So I'm just so happy that this is coming to fruition here. It's the need is so great. And you see with this design and these rooms, it really is for families. Like, I don't know where else in the Comox Valley you're going to find 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom apartments, let alone ones that are going to be rent guaranteed income or affordable. It's amazing. I'm so happy, and I really like the design, and I like the fact that we're leaving trees. I'm okay with the fact that we have to do parking on street, and I would like to refer it back to the Affordable Housing Committee for comment, though, if we could. But yeah, I'm just so happy this is finally come forward. So, yay!
Councillor Brown?
Me too. This is awesome. Very excited, super happy that it's come forward with a family focus, because, families are who we are out here. I was concerned about the trees, so happy to see that they will be retaining. I would like clarification at some point about exactly which trees are coming down so that we don't have people freaking out about trees coming down, because there are several large trees on that property. Also happy with the curbside parking, if they can make that work on the street. That's what most residences do in Cumberland. So that's fine by me as well. I wonder about the bylaw. I have a couple of questions about because we're creating this new bylaw, that it's not specifically a rental zone, and why wouldn't we do that at the same time to ensure that it's always rental? And not that it can change, that's probably contingent on the lease, but just to clarify that for future and other developments, they would also be rental, and put that right into the bylaw. And then the other question I have about the bylaw is that it says, I think, a height of 15, maximum height of 15 meters, which when I asked Google, said that was 4.5 stories. So this is a 3-story. I don't think do we have a 4-story in Cumberland, and are we setting a precedent for a 4-story unnecessarily here? Or is it actually a 3-story with tall ceilings, which would be way nicer?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Perhaps both your comments. Yeah, we'll definitely look at that, whether we could propose this as a rental only zone. So if a project is funded by BC Housing, there's a covenant, a housing agreement on title, and it's usually for 30 years, which is more stable than a zoning, because people can rezone, but nonetheless, it can be a signal. So I think we'll discuss that and come back with a suggestion. Yeah, but that would be if it receives funding, there is a housing agreement on title. So to reserve it for affordable housing. But yes, the height. So the 15 meters actually does reflect what I don't have my zoning bylaw or Bible here right now, but I do recall it reflects what we actually allow in the VCMU1 zone. This is downtown core. It does allow, you're right, it allows 4 stories. And I think we also permit that in the mixed use zone for Coal Valley Estates. So the proposed apartment building at the top of Coal Valley Estates is actually, I think, as proposed, it's at least 4 units, and they might even be able to fit in 5. I'd have to look. So they have 15 meters back there as well. So it's not the first time we're doing 15 meters. What I don't know offhand right now is what the RM3 permits. So I'd have to look into that, but yeah, you're right. So it would require, it would allow building up. Yeah, the density would not necessarily permit it having the same footprint if they build up. Actually, the footprint would shrink, but it would then be higher. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good considerations. And in addition to referring to homelessness and affordability, to refer to accessibility as well.
Okay,
So I can just do that then.
I'd like to say something
Oh,
first.
you're gonna be ready? Okay, let's go, let's go.
I know you're excited, but I'm really happy to see this come forward. It's been a long process, and I'm glad to see that they've relented a little bit and haven't tried to push it as fast as they wanted to. They understand the time constraints with BC Housing, and so this is really happy that I'm very happy that it's coming about, and I'm going to look forward to hearing what the residents have to say. I know there was some concerns when people first heard about this, about who was going to be going into this affordable housing units. And I think it will be a good asset to the community to have this here. So now you can make your motion.
Okay. Now I have to find it again. To refer the application for an OCP amendment and rezoning of 3339, 3341, and 3345 Second Street legally described as lots 3, 4, and 5, block 32, district lot 24, Nelson District Plan 3268 to the next meeting of the Advisory Planning Commission, the Homelessness and Affordability Committee, and the Accessibility Committee. Can I do that all together?
Yeah, seconder, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. The council received development permit 2767 Derwent Avenue report dated July 23rd, 2020. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried.
Yeah, Mayor and Council. So this is development permit to permit an accessory dwelling unit at 27 on the back of the lot at 2767 Derwent Avenue. There is no variance required for this proposed ADU, so it would meet all these setbacks. The applicant put a notice sign on the property and sent a notification to the neighbors, and the applicant sent a notification as well to inform them of the permit application. So far, we've received one comment, and it was possibly more questions and comments, and I think I was able to answer some of them, but I'm waiting to hear back if there's further questions. And it was really access to the unit, whether it was from the back, whether windows were going to face this neighbor's backyard, how many vehicles might be parked off the lane, and concern about lighting and light pollution. So I will transmit that to the applicant to make sure that those kind of concerns can be addressed, hopefully through the the lighting is a requirement of the DP. So I think hopefully we can address all of those. So at this point, this is just a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission. We are recommending this case to waive the requirement for a neighborhood public meeting. And that's because, as you know, the development permit guidelines, we cannot, there is limited discretion by the public or council, unlike a rezoning or a temporary use permit, to weigh in on what the guidelines should be. The guidelines should be set. So it's really a checklist. So we found in the past when public neighborhood meetings have been held, there was an expectation that things could be changed significantly. If the applicant meets the guidelines, we cannot really deny the DP. So we are requesting waiving that requirement and just referring it to the Advisory Planning Commission for comment.
Anyone have any questions? Someone like to make the motion then?
Sure, I'll move Councillor for the application 2020-05 DP for development permit on property described as lot 11, block 17, district lot 21, Nelson District Plan VIP 522A, 2767 Derwent Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation. Further, the council waive the requirement for a neighborhood public meeting for the development permit.
Seconder. Counselor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Next,
Oh. Oh, sorry.
that council receive the report application development variance permit 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue dated July 27th.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Counselor Kettler and Counselor Brown, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, yeah, to Mayor and Council. So this application is coming back to you with a recommendation from the Advisory Planning Commission. And it was to vary the rear yard setbacks to allow for subdivision of an existing building on site, to allow for subdivision of this residential infill lot on Dunsmuir Avenue. The lot does require allowed to be the minimum lot size allows that lot to be split exactly in two. This doesn't allow the applicant though to move the lot line away from the rear of the building, the existing building that's fronting Dunsmuir. So the applicant is seeking to vary that setback from the proposed new lot behind it, which would have a main entrance of 2nd Street. So the variance is down to 1.6 meters from the required, 4.5 meters. So this does sound narrow. And we discussed it at the Advisory Planning Commission, which is recommending for approval. So the benefit to the applicant in this case is that the front door of the lot behind will be on 6th, I think it's 6th Street there, which means that for them, that rear yard setback for the existing dwelling unit is a side yard setback, which would normally be 1.5 meters. So the closeness of that existing dwelling unit to the neighbor won't be to their rear yard. Does this make sense? So that was one consideration when we discussed this at the APC. We're not imposing a building super tight to a rear yard. The other advantage, of course, that the applicant has in this is that that newly created lot is empty, so whoever buys it will be aware of where the existing building is and has potentially some room to maneuver or locate their new dwelling, or at a minimum they know what they're buying. And there was no comments by neighbors. There was no comments received by neighbors in response to our mail out.
Any questions from council members? Councilor Brown?
So the current owner is not planning to build on that property, even though the drawings look like there's a building planned to be there.
Oh.
I'm a bit confused by the drawing on page 123.
Okay.
It shows, yeah. Can you just explain what's going
Yeah,
on?
I can speak to that. So that's what you see there, and then outline is the building footprint, or sorry, not the building footprint, the area that they could build within if they were to observe all the setbacks for the newly to be created lot. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean that new building will be that size. I mean, they'd also have to meet the lot coverage, or they'd have to come back, apply for another variance. I mean, they can do that. So if they want to build outside of that dashed line, blue line, then they'd have to come back for another variance. Yeah.
Okay, that was my other question, is that looks like a lot of lot coverage, but if they're not, that's just allowable building space. It's not actual building, then yeah, that's okay.
Right. And yeah, it's a little confusing, and that the deck, you see that orangey, I don't know, it's actually red, sorry.
Pinkish, yeah.
Pinkish rectangle, that's an existing deck that's being taken off.
Okay,
That's
great.
to be removed, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion to move?
I can do that. Approve the application for a development, that council approve the application for a development variance permit for property legally described as Lot 1, Block 27, District Lot 21, Nelson District, Plan 522C, 2814 Dunsmuir Avenue, with which varies a rear yard setback for principal dwellings from the required 4.5 meters to 1.6 meters as shown on the site drawing attached as Schedule A to the permit dated July 9th, 2020.
Second, Councillor Sullivan seconded. All in favor? Carried. Next, the council received the development permit 2020-07 DP 3190 Royston Road report dated July 29th, 2020.
Move receipt.
Councillor Kettler, second. On favor, carried.
Yeah, to mayor and council, last report on from my end for this evening. We've been keeping the APC busy. This one is actually intended not to go to the APC with your approval. So the recommendation is to approve the development permit as presented with this report and not have a referral to the APC, and I can explain why that is. So the existing a building is being moved, a modular building is being, the intention is to move a modular building onto the property owned by MCON into the, I don't know if you see a site plan attached here. Yes, Appendix A, page 130, into this kind of the southwest corner of that property. And that location on that property does not front Royston Road. There's another sliver of a triangular lot in between that proposed new building location and Royston Road. So there's no frontage fronting Royston Road from that from that office building. The building is also fairly low, and you have a design that what it's going to look like is shown on page 132. This is the type of building. I don't know if it's going to be the exact color, but as you can see, it's fairly low. So you won't be able to see it from Royston Road. The other thing is that the applicant still has an outstanding industrial DP, received an industrial DP a year and a half or so ago. It was processed in 2018 for a salt shed on that property. And as part of that DP, they were required to do some landscaping on the area fronting Royston Road. We have to do actually an inspection on that soon. I think the 1 year is almost up, where we review whether they've meeting the landscape requirements before we return part of the security. So there's no additional requests that we can to be asked for as part of this DP, because it's the landscaping has already been provided on Royston Road. We do not have a way to exempt them from an industrial DP in our bylaw, so it's still coming forward to you. But we are proposing, in the interest of time, for the applicant to be able to move their building, but also because there's nothing really that we can add to what we've already asked, that it be that a referral to the APC may not be required, and we're just recommending approval of the DP at this time.
Questions from council? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that in our industrial DPA, there is a section for accessibility, and being the rep to the accessibility committee, I do feel a responsibility to say that I don't think that having accessibility features not applicable is appropriate, because it's very possible that someone who has a physical accessibility need could be hired in an electrical company, and there would be no way for them to get into a building. So I'm not going to push it to get referred to accessibility, but I do think that it should be considered regardless of the zoning for employee, not just for public access, but for possible future employees.
Mm-hmm. You would have the option, if you haven't, to propose that we look at this and potentially include that into the development permit some language. Access to the office building for the main door, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, all it is a ramp instead of stairs. The interior looks like it's fairly accessible already, the design there. So it's just that, and then it's an option.
Okay, so what is anyone else have any questions? So what is your pleasure? Someone want to move it?
I'll move. Do we need to put, Karen, should I put language in about the accessibility, about the ramp?
You know, we are fine to explore that with the applicant. It's up to you, but I think that is a very good comment. So
Yeah, I do too.
you don't have to. We can require it as part of the DP.
Okay.
We don't need a council resolution. It is in the DP, so we can take a closer look at how they're meeting that. And say this is, you know, you're not meeting this requirement, this is pointed out at council. So we don't need a resolution. I can just say we need to see something to provide access to the main entrance.
Okay.
It's up to you. I don't think it's needed, but it's up to you.
I'm satisfied with what you just said. I'll move the council approved development permit 2020-07 DP for the property described as Lot A, Section 30, Township 11, Nelson District Plan VIP 69479. 3190 Royston Road, substantially in compliance with the development permit dated August 10, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Next, recommend that council receive the Comox Valley Regional District 3L Developments Incorporated 0768816 BC Limited Referral Report. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Your
Welcome,
Worship.
Ken.
It's been a long meeting. Okay, well, I'll get into this in recognizing the time. The referral received from the regional district is in regards to a proposal to amend the zone and the OCP for the regional district. There's quite a few issues here. I tried to simplify the response from the village into basically the bare fact that it's not in compliance or future compliance with the regional growth strategy. You'll notice that on page 250 of the agenda package, at the end of the chart, they have this list of the current zone being rural 20 and the proposed zone being to be determined. The interesting part there is this is a rezoning application and they haven't defined what the new zone would be. So let's just move on from that because it doesn't require any further discussion as nothing was really put in it by the applicant or the referral. In regards to the OCP amendment, they're seeking to designate a new area as a settlement node and exchange the settlement expansion area, which is the area that Courtney could grow into, with a rural settlement area. It's an interesting concept, but when you look at the mapping on page 263, there is a settlement expansion area finger, you might say, that would be on the other side of the bridge for the Puntledge. And directly on the other side of the bridge would be the settlement node, the extension of it. So it is in essence directly touching each other. And if you look in the OCP, one of the objectives for settlement nodes is the nodes are intended to be mixed density communities with a range of housing types, local services for commercial uses and service industries to foster complete communities. Given that it's directly adjacent to Courtney, it would be somewhat challenged to foster a complete community here. So given that, and recognizing their inability to separate the settlement node with adequate spacing as per the policies of the regional growth strategy. The recommendation from council for staff from to council is to respond with the sorry, lost in the paperwork here. Respond with the proposal does not meet the regional growth strategy requirement that settlement nodes are not or plan to be contiguous with municipal areas.
Any questions of Ken? Yes, Councillor Kettler.
Just a comment. Thanks, Ken, for doing that. I thought it was a really good response. And just to add that, you know, a lot of public input went into the regional growth strategy when the original settlement nodes were decided, which are the 3 Union Bay and Mount Washington and Saratoga. So, you know, basically we don't want to, you know, add another node unless we've already used all those areas that we've already designated, and we haven't. And according to our recent housing needs report as well, we haven't used up those areas within new municipalities either. So there just isn't the justification for creating a new settlement node. But thanks, Ken, for the report. It was really good.
Councillor Sproul.
Yeah, this has so much has been said already by the public, by politicians about how this does not fit in with the regional growth strategy, not in any way. It will create car-dependent community. It will draw growth from where the infrastructure is to somewhere in the middle, not connected at all to anything. The argument about the settlement nodes, because that's what the proponent is referring to, the settlement nodes are around areas that have already developed without infrastructure, like Mount Washington, Saratoga Beach, but those settlement nodes do not cover somewhere like this that is. Anyway, this doesn't fit with the parameters of the regional growth strategy, and we need to make it clear. And hopefully we won't have to do this again, over and over again. And so.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just agreeing with everybody else that the purpose of the regional growth management plan is to manage regional growth. And this isn't regional growth, it's creating a whole nother community, butting up against another community, which is not what we're looking for in that area. It's supposed to be rural living, not communities like this. And I'm also quite concerned about privatizing water and sewer in communities, because I think that's not a sustainable way to manage people's access to water or sewer. So yeah, agreed. Thanks for the report, Ken.
Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, I just echo everybody's sentiment for sure. I'm just hoping that this is the last time that everybody this. I'm sure everybody feels the same way, and I definitely support not supporting 3L. I can read the motion if you guys like. I'll move the council direct staff to provide the following comments to Comox Valley Regional District 3L Developments Incorporated 0768816 BC Limited referral. That the council for the Village of Cumberland not support the proposed 3L Developments Incorporated 0768816 BC Limited request to the CVRD with the following comments. The proposal does not meet the RGS requirements that settlement nodes are not or plan to be contiguous with municipal areas.
Seconder. Councillor Brown, all in favor? Just one follow-up question, Ken, is what would be the, if we don't support it and say Courtney does, what is the process that would go through at the RD?
Oh, that's quite the question, Your Worship. Ultimately, this does require, yeah, this would require a regional growth strategy amendment, and the village and all the other communities would be engaged further for this.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. Next, recommend that council receive the 2023 strategic priorities report. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor Baird. The purpose of bringing the 2020 to 2023 strategic priorities on this agenda is to showcase it to the community. The document has already been finalized and it has been posted on the website. So basically it's to present it to the residents of Cumberland, and it's a very valuable document to show where council's priorities are going to be focused as we move into budget this fall for the 2021 year. And I've summarized a few highlights, but perhaps I'll let council, this is your plan, maybe I'll let you speak to it.
Okay, I will say the process was very interesting. It was nice to have such a clear and focused facilitator when we were working on this. It makes all the difference in the world as to the outcome. It was a good day, a great deal of conversation and input from members of council. And it took a time because there was some little things that we had to iron out. But overall, it looks amazing. And my comments to staff are thank you very much for making the work that we're doing interesting. And so what I'm going to do is go around and ask each council member to make a comment about their views of our strategic priorities. And please open it up to everybody. Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, all I really have to say is I really like the pictures that staff finalized on. We had a little bit of input of that, and this is definitely the most concise strategic priorities we've ever had, and just the design and the implementation is great, and I'm really happy about it.
Councillor Sproul.
Yeah, I think this is the whole process was really worthy. The final publication, it really is. We haven't had anything so attractive in a sense that it brings the public into going, oh, they're taking a pride in Cumberland. I enjoyed the whole process right from the day that we started. Feedback on some of the layout. It's without fault as far as I'm concerned. So thank you to all.
Councillor Kettler.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I probably will start by also saying, yeah, I really enjoyed the process. That was probably one of the better strategic planning sessions we've had. And it was really engaging both of council and of staff. So so I think that was what made it so great. And as far as priorities, I think it really does reflect our values now. We did change some language around tourism and recreation, and I think that's reflective of where we're at now compared to where we were 5 years ago. And so yeah, I think it's good. It still has those same values, but with some more contemporary ideas about tourism. So yeah, it's good. I'm happy with it. Thanks.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, same. Thank you, Clayton, for the process. It was really appreciated. And I did want to, because tourism, the change to the tourism focus is mentioned, I did want to speak to that a little bit. I think for a while, council's been like, oh, tourism is, tourism could be the way. And it clearly has become the way. And so it certainly does not need our focus at this time, except to look at mitigation and sustainability factors, which I hope to have a conversation in the near future, perhaps via the Economic Development Steering Committee around tourism and how we might manage it to our benefit, I guess. Yeah, and I think packaging it up like this in a super readable way makes it way more accessible to our community, and people might actually read it. So thank you for that as well.
Clayton, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think more than anything, just want to thank council for allowing staff to provide information and background on many of the items that are included in there. And I think I know from a staff's perspective, it was a valuable process for us to really clarify the direction. And so we really have an understanding of what the model is moving forward. So again, from staff perspective, we're excited to get working on these priorities, and a lot of them are underway right now, and we'll regularly report through our quarterly updates. And so yeah, I think it's a good place for us to begin the journey down this path here.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate that. So any further? Yes.
Sorry, I forgot one thing. I do want to mention, just for I know there's always this, or I'm realizing that there's always this demand for us, for the village and for council, to be doing more and more and more and more and more. And I'm sure we all could have listed 20 more strategic priorities to this document, but we do have humans working for us who have limitations, and so just that there is that we are always having to work with that balance. And I think we've found a way to do the infrastructure, prioritize the infrastructure needs, as well as some of the community's priorities into this, and so I'm pleased with that result. But of course, everybody always wants more. So
well, I find really interesting is everybody comes to the table with their own agenda, and to watch it all come together, it's absolutely amazing how we all give and we all take, and how we can work together to come back with a document that we can all be very proud of. And it sets our course. Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have that council received the 2019 annual meeting report and receive any submissions and questions from the public. Councillor Brown, Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you. This report was approved by council at the first meeting in July, and staff advertised its availability as required by the community charter. We haven't received any questions or comments. At this point, of course, you're welcome to receive comments at question period to this meeting. The report is just a summary of highlights from 2019, and it includes your consolidated financial statements and some other progress reports.
What I always find amazing in these reports is when you sit down and read them and see what you are able to accomplish in the past year. And until you see this written, you can actually forget about some of the things that you have done and what you were able to accomplish. And the amount of work that staff has done in this past year has been absolutely tremendous. And I hope they realize that we are very, very supportive and appreciative of all the time that they put in for us. And it's also a lot of work for council members. We do have to have give direction. So thank you. So yes, Councillor Sullivan.
I'd just like to add that if there's nobody with no comments about it, it must mean we're doing a great job. That's what that means, I'm pretty sure, right, Rachel?
Yeah, that's right.
I certainly hope so, until the next person stops you on the street. And I always like those opportunities to discuss things, because sometimes that's where you get your ideas, but also some very good input from people. Okay, we'll move along then to the council received the Village of Cumberland Workplace Bullying and Harassment Policy and Policy Statement Report. Councillor Brown and Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
Your worship, what you have before you is just a report relating to our proposed workplace bullying and harassment policy and policy statement. So one of the things that I'd come across as we're going through, there are a number of corporate policies that need updating, and this was one. And so over the next period of months, you will see a few more of these policies. So it's not, I guess what I want to say, it's not in particular that we're bringing this particular one up first. It was just one that through our safety committee and other committees needed to be reviewed. And so we've updated it with all the relevant WorkSafe requirements there. And I guess the one thing, the reason why this one here is before council is typically most HR ones are administrative policies and they're done through the administrative side. But because this one covers the entire organization, council, all staff, it's important to have this in front of council to bring that forward to confirm the commitment of a workplace that's free of any bullying and harassment. So I'm happy to answer any questions or receive any comments relating to it.
Anyone have any questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Brown.
I don't see, and there was a lot of reading for this meeting, so perhaps I missed it. Like a whistleblower aspect to this, and also to a follow up to that. So when should it become a situation where the CAO or a member of council becomes the bully in question? What happens? What's the process at that point?
Yeah, great question. So this particular policy doesn't really cover what you would possibly refer to as whistleblower. It's really it's where someone within the organization is feeling they're in a situation that they are feeling either bullied or harassed. This policy will allow the process for that report to be received, that investigation to occur, and a resolution in the sense of all the steps related to where the outcome of that process is. So anytime I guess how I would explain, anytime a report comes, certainly there's confidentiality with that. But in the case of bullying and harassment, when someone does report, say if they are the recipient of something they believe is bullying, it is outlined within the policy on what that actually process will look like. Who is going to know about it if it is individuals, that's up front, so that individual has the choice on how they'd like to proceed down that path. So we're very clear within the process of what is actually their responsibility if they're submitting the claim there, or we ensure all the staff are trained on this so they understand. And actually council will receive training on this as well. So everyone with the organization will receive training on that. And the second question was in relation,
So there's a process by which people take their concern to an adjudicator, but when the adjudicator is the CAO.
Yeah, good question. So there is the ability to use a third party investigator, and so ultimately there would be a point if it was a situation where it was a CAO or council, there would be a situation there where a third party would be brought in, and the entire council could be part of that process there and reviewing it. So it's not specifically defined that right now, but what it does allow to have that third party come in and administer an investigation and come with outcomes and so forth. So that is part of the process as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. So we need a motion.
I'll move the council adopt the Village of Cumberland Workplace Bullying and Harassment Policy and Policy Statement.
Seconder, Councillor Brown. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Clayton. That's a lot of work that has been done, and thanks for keeping us updated. Next, we have that council received the committee of the whole report that the yes. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried. This is a report, the purpose of this report is to seek council ratification of recommendations of the committee of the whole at its meeting on July 27th. So if somebody would like to move that. Councillor Kettler and Councillor Sullivan. All in favor? Carried. Next, 16.6. Councillor Kettler. Oh, just a minute.
I thought we were going to refer the Bevan Industrial Lands. Do we need to do that still?
Yes.
That's
Okay,
what you moved. Oh, didn't
I'll
you?
move.
I thought that's what we did.
I thought we just received the report and now we've got to refer the.
Okay, now we'll do the second. Okay, go ahead.
I'll move that council refer the Bevan Industrial Lands Conceptual Master Plan to the Economic Development Steering Committee for discussion to provide feedback to council for consideration.
Second, Councillor Kettler. Any further discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry.
I do have further discussion. Yeah, so you know, we had a lot of I know we're only dealing with the Bevan Lands conceptual plan there because Coal Valley Estates, which we talked about at length during that meeting, decided to pull his consideration of the comprehensive development agreement. So, but there are still a lot of things that we would like to come back out of that. I think, you know, council had a lot of input for staff on different reports we would like to see. And I'm just wondering, were all those reports taken into consideration, and how will that information be processed now, if at all?
Yes, Clayton.
Yeah, thank you. So we have, since the last committee of the whole, we have received a written response from the applicant at that time, or the submission of the CDA change. So that will be coming back to council hopefully at the next meeting. Staff are just reviewing it, and that identified all of the points that actually were brought up by council. And so they've provided some response and some background, but staff also need to review that. So there is a expectation that will be at a upcoming council meeting there, and we'll have that information. It's just, we've just received that information and staff have not had a chance to review the responses back.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, following up on that, thank you, Councillor Kettler. So the reports that we requested, the traffic study and the other reports that we asked the developer for, they'll be submitting those as well. That's included in the response.
Through your worship, so the response from initially I've seen, I have not reviewed the entire thing, but it's not the actual reports, but it's a response relating to what the request of the committee was at that time. So council will receive what the status of each of those are. We don't have, some of them we still would need to request further information on, but I don't think there's been any work relating to having more reports done since that meeting. This is just a response of where those reports are through the owner there. Yeah.
Okay. So all in favor of the motion? Carried. Next, that council received a temporary street closure Friday, Fest report. Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you. So this is a late item on the agenda, and I expect that none of you have had a chance to read it since it was distributed so late. We received the application on last week on Wednesday, and I think the church was initially planning to have this event without the outdoor space, but I think they're trying to make the event more safe with the COVID requirements for physical distancing, and hence the request to move the listening area onto the street. I can share a bit from the application. The event details are that it's a street concert to celebrate all of the artists and residents that have been creating new music during our residency program the week earlier. And event activities include sitting, listening, chatting, praying, meditating, and eating. I worked a bit with Ingrid, the Reverend of the church, and she sent me the indoor spaces COVID safety plan for the church, similar to something that the village has. And the event will be less than 50 people. You'll see in the comments, I think access will be limited to 35. So I did ask her for a bit of that information about how they're going to restrict the comings and goings of people within the closure area. So she's provided that information. And one thing that I talked to our recreation manager and the way they manage park rentals currently and even recreation programs is that they have a resumption of assumption of risk declaration that they use. And it's basically to make sure that the applicant acknowledges that they're responsible for adhering to health orders and protocols, and then that it's not the village's responsibility to approve or enforce their safety plans. The church is also willing to add the village as an additional insured to the insurance policy. It's not required with this typically a low risk event. It falls beneath that threshold, but they've agreed to do so, and I think that's probably should accept that offer. And then in regards to the street closure yourself, we asked them to, initially the closure was 2nd Street all the way to Maryport. We've asked them to end the closure to Beaufort so that route can remain open from Beaufort to Maryport. That's a fairly well-used route. And you'll see the plan there with the barricades, and they'll use detour signage as well. And the manager of operations has signed off on that. So we're bringing it for council to consider for an approval for that date on, and it should be August 28th. Sorry, it says April. August 28th from 4 to 8 p.m. on the Friday night.
Any questions? Councillor Brown?
Looks great.
Councillor Sullivan?
I always support closing the streets for just about anything. So if you're listening out there, yeah, apply to close the streets for more music and more fun with your neighbors. So
Okay. Do you want to make the motion then? Or do you have it?
I don't have it. I'll move the street closure, the motion of the street closure. I don't know if I need the details. Do I, Rachel? On the August 28th, Saturday, from Sunday to Sunday?
4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. No bylaws, no new business, notice motions and amendments. Economic Development Advisory Committee, September the 2nd at 6 p.m. Advisory Planning Commission, August 13th at 4 p.m. Drop-in outdoor open house 3339 Second Street behind Cumberland Lodge regarding a proposed multifamily affordable rental housing development Thursday, August 27th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And last, overdose prevention workshop, August the 19th at 7 p.m. Email village to register. Everyone must register. Okay. Next question period. Please send questions by email to info@cumberland.ca and using subject line question period. Note, please limit to questions only. Comments will not be read out. We're just about there, guys. We won't have to have a special resolution at 9. Hopefully.
Close. So we did have some questions about the Coal Valley Estates development permit, and because that item was removed from the agenda, I won't read those ones out. There's one about the Island Health rezoning application. And the question is, why is such an immense undertaking being proposed for such small lots?
Because it meets all the requirements, does it not? It fits on the property. Does it not meet all the regulations? Like, they're not asking for variances, are they?
I did comment to the individual that asked the question, and basically that council is obliged to consider any application for rezoning, but it does require a rezoning and a public hearing and community input, and council will consider that public input before either approving the application or denying the application. So it's not up to the village to propose what development it is. It's up to the applicant, and it's council's job to consider that application. So
Yes.
I did give a preliminary answer to the person
Yes.
asking.
It's like any development that comes forward. Council isn't aware of all the ins and outs of the application until it is put on the table in front of them. And that's when we get our first look at it. Okay.
Okay, and I had more here, and this is about the TUP application on Cumberland Road for the fitness studio. It says the village allows a business to operate for 3 months before deciding whether the use will be permitted, even though both zoning and business license bylaws state these actions are unlawful. Is this correct? I guess is it correct that it's unlawful?
Unlawful to what? To our process? In the
I guess
past,
to allow them to operate outside the bylaws.
yeah, in the past, we have allowed it to happen. And to me, it's like you treat all businesses the same. If you've allowed it in the past, then you don't turn around now and say, no, you can't do that. I think they all need to be treated the same, in the same way. And unfortunately, some circumstances, things happen that you're not aware of. And we try and help businesses.
Okay, ready for the next question?
Mm-hmm.
This is regarding the building on Dunsmuir. I think that's the one next to the Seeds building. Wouldn't they need to have bicycle parking and parking for employees of the commercial part? Oh yeah, the commercial part of the building.
There was biking in the front entranceway. They had a biking stall there. I guess that's for visitors that come into the store. The picture showed a bike rack. But I don't know. I'm sorry, I missed the rest of the question.
And parking for employees.
You have to ask planning for that one. Are they still here, Clayton?
I'm not sure if Ken is on there. Just regarding the bike, or there's Karen, thank you. There was, I know there was a, within the drawings there was bike storage lockers as well as bike parking outside. So they did have multiple areas of biking lockers within the designs there. And Karen, can you answer any questions relating to requirements for businesses to provide parking?
Yeah, so they do have, based on the size, the square units of that retail space, they required one spot, and that's the spot that would be for the commercial tenant that they're seeking to vary the required cash and lieu because they can't provide on site. So yes, it's one for the retail area, and as Clayton said, all the required bicycle parking for the residents is provided on the ground floor in the back, and in the front there's some bicycle parking for visitors or users of the retail area.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have. No more
Okay,
questions.
motion to adjourn. Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan. We made it with 4 minutes to spare before we had to make a resolution. So thank you very much, everybody. Job well done. A lot of reading this time.